Sonia, would you lead us, if you don't mind? Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I now call the scheduled meeting of the Board of Adjustments to order. Let me just do a couple things. At the last meeting, Sonia joined us, and I forgot to introduce her. Ms. Sonia Mallard is now in District 1 and represents District 1 for all of the cases there. And then joining us for the first time today for District 4 is Mr. John Thomas. And then sitting in for Mr. Bill Huffman is his alternate, Mr. Dave Newman. Okay? All right. Mr. Bodie, from the Planning and Development Office, would you please describe the function and operation of the Board of Adjustments to our applicants and the audience?
Yes, yes, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body established by the Board of County Commissioners under Chapter 62, Article 2, Division 4 of Brevard County Code. The Board of Adjustment is empowered to hear requests for variances to the zoning regulations and the sign regulation in Chapters 62, Article 6, and Article 9. Pursuant to Florida Rules of Appellate Procedure, any person or persons jointly or severally aggrieved by any decision of the Board of Adjustment may, within 30 days after the date the order is signed, apply to a court of competent jurisdiction for appropriate relief. Mr. Chairman, you have 7 items on your agenda today.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. McCann, would you please explain to the applicants and the audience the definition of a hardship?
An undue hardship. A variance may be granted when it will not be contrary to the public interest and where, owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter will result in unnecessary and undue hardship. The term undue hardship has a specific legal definition in this context and essentially means without the requested variance, the applicant will have no reasonable use of the subject property under existing development regulations. Personal medical reasons shall not be considered as grounds for establishing an undue hardship sufficient to qualify an applicant for a variance. Economic reasons may be considered only in instances where the landowner cannot yield a reasonable use and or reasonable return under the existing land development regulations. The applicant must answer a variance hardship worksheet with 6 questions. The Board of Adjustments will discuss these questions today with each applicant who has requested a variance.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to address the board members, the applicants, and our audience for a moment. The Board of Adjustments is a quasi-judicial board with members appointed by the Brevard County Board of Commissioners, utilizes Robert Rules of Order to conduct our meetings. The chair is asking all board members not to ask any questions while the applicants are making their presentations. Once the applicants have completed their presentation, we will begin board questioning with the board member who represents the applicant's district. When concluded, questioning is open to the full board. The chair will recognize each board member. Once all board members have completed their questioning, we will then open it to the audience who may be here to speak concerning an applicant's application. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak will be given the opportunity to address the board, but only once. At the conclusion of public comment, the applicant will be given additional time for rebuttal, as well as to present their final comments. Once completed, no further comment will be heard from the applicant or the public. We do not use a timer for this meeting. Instead, we are asking each speaker to be concise in what they have to say. It is important that you stay on subject and avoid information that is not relevant. All persons speaking must provide their name and address for public record, and those wishing not to verbally state their address may ask the clerk at the podium for an address card. Please fill it out and return it to the clerk. Are there any questions from the board members about the chair procedures? Any questions from the applicants about chair procedures? Any questions from the audience about any chair procedures? Very well. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes by Mr. McCann. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Newman. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. Mr. Bodie, may we have the first applicant as requesting a variance?
Yes, item number 1, application 22V00021, Paula L. Herron and Claudia Volland. This property has currently been sold. The new owners are now AKM Gratitude of Prosperity LLC. Request a variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-1481, 5A1, to permit a variance of 36.78 feet from the required 50-foot front setback for a principal structure in a BU-1-A restricted neighborhood commercial zoning classification. The property is currently zoned as RU-1-11, single-family residential zoning. The tax account number 2426731 and is located in District 2.
Would the applicant please come to the podium? Hello. If you would, as close to the mic as you can.
Yes, so my name is Caitlin Malenfant. I'm the real estate agent for the new owners,
Okay.
and they wanted to switch it to the
Hang on.
commercial.
I need you to give me your name and address for the record.
Oh, Caitlin Malenfant, 375 East Merritt Ave, Merritt Island, Florida.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Anytime it's not the applicant, I look over to make sure
Yeah.
the proper paperwork is there. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes, sir.
Then how may we help you?
Okay, so they wanted to get it rezoned to the commercial use, I believe. And there's a flag post store right next to it, and then there's a dog groomers right behind. So the previous owner said that there shouldn't be an issue with getting it rezoned, but I just came here to be in place. I don't know too much on what I need to do,
Okay.
but yeah, they told me to show up to this meeting. So
Welcome.
I'm here.
All right. You're in District 2. Mr. McCann.
Is it your understanding that the variance request has to do with the position of the building as related to the position of the road and how close it is?
I'm not too sure about that. That's from Paula and Claudia, but we're here to make sure that it gets rezoned so they can turn it into a business.
We're not here for the rezoning action at this moment. This is
Really?
just for the variance.
Okay.
So that,
Well, I'll stick with it.
stick with it.
Yeah, what?
All right, we're going to just handle
Yeah.
the variance request here, and
Okay.
then another process would be in place for the rezoning.
Okay, they didn't let me know that.
Well,
Well, here I
pretty
am.
sure that's the case.
That is
Yeah.
the case.
Okay, and so the variance request is a request to permit a variance of 36.78 feet from the required 50-foot front setback for a principal structure in a BU-1-A restricted neighborhood commercial zoning classification. That's the zoning that the property owners want to change the current zoning to.
Yeah, I know that the previous owners, that's what they wanted to do, and if we could still follow through with that, that would be just fine.
Have you had an opportunity to be at that location?
Yes,
And you've seen the structure?
yes,
The structure was pre-existing before the sale of the property?
yes.
And the structure, in your opinion, is at sufficient distance from the road for safety purposes?
It's a bit short from the mailbox to the road. There's nothing there, and then from the driveway to the road, it's a very short distance too. I was told that they pushed it back previously, and it took away from the front of their yard. The previous owner, she chained herself to a tree in front of the yard, so they wouldn't do it, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
But you did do some research on the two properties on either side of this subject property?
Yes.
Is that right? And they're both zoned for business and residential
Yes.
use? I have no other questions.
Okay.
Other board members, questions? Do you know what they plan to do with the current structure that exists on the property?
Yes, it's going to be into a spa salon type of building. They haven't came up with a complete business name on it, but it will be a business.
Are they going to leave that structure there, or do they intend to tear it down and build a
No.
different structure?
It will be there. It'll
They-
remain
They
there.
intend to allow that structure to remain as is?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else, guys? Okay. If you'll stand to the side for a moment. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, come on back to the podium. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, well, come forward, please. I'm sorry. If you'll have a seat, please. I didn't see you. My apologies.
Carter Hayes, 1210 South Atlantic Ave, Cocoa Beach.
Yes, sir.
I think on this one,
I'm sorry. Please raise your right hand.
yeah,
Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give us Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
How may we help you?
I think that house was there and been there a long time. And then they widened that road, Merritt Ave, widened the road, so jammed them up. I think the lady, like she said,
Close to the microphone.
chained her, whatever to the tree. But that's what happened. They took that land, eminent domain, and then now the house is in violation. See what I'm saying? They created that. So anyways, that's what I know about
Okay,
that.
stay right there. Are you in favor or
I'm in
opposition?
favor, and there's 2 stores right behind it, so it is kind of a commercial little area.
Right, so you're in
right there.
favor?
Sure, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to the variance request? Just want to make sure I don't miss somebody else. Okay. Ma'am, please return. Any final comments?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. You may have a
Okay.
seat.
Thank you.
All right, Board, it is your pleasure what you would like to do.
I would like to make a motion to approve the variance request as depicted in the application and on the survey.
Second. We have a motion to approve by Mr. McCann. We have a second to approve by Mr. Thomas. We now move to discussion. We've got to go through the 6 points. Before we go through the 6 points, I want to propose an amendment to Yeah, okay, well, we'll discuss first, then we'll propose the amendment. All right. Did you have something you wanted to?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay. So I visited the location, and I wanted to get a feel for what exactly the variance request concerns. And I am familiar with that area, being a nearby resident myself. And I know that the 2 structures, or the 2 properties adjacent on either side of this property is zoned for commercial and residential combined. I know there's businesses operating in both of them, and when I walk the property, there seems like very sufficient room between the structure and the road, and I would have absolutely no issue with approving this variance.
Okay. Before I talk, any other discussion? All right. I would like to propose an amendment to this, and I'm going to explain why. First of all, this is a 74% deviation from what the board allows, or from what the code allows. That is a huge deviation, okay? The concern that I have is once you approve this, if they decided to tear that structure down, and since the owners aren't here, we really don't know what they want to do. We're, having to take, thoughts on it. If they decided to tear that structure down, putting another structure up, getting the adequate parking, and making that safe would be an issue. So my amendment would be that we would approve this contingent upon the agreement that the current structure is not going to be torn down, and that would be the structure being used for the business.
Well, I do know from visiting the property that the structure is currently under construction. It's being remodeled substantially, and speaking with one of the future employees or possible business owners of the business, that is not the case. They're not going to be doing that. But I don't necessarily have an issue with the amendment.
Okay.
I'd like to address the board too.
Please, sir.
They will have to go through site planning to be able to turn this into a commercial type of use with the parking and requirements for all of it. So it will have to come through site planning if they do get their rezoning approved to the BU 1A.
Would my amendment be
You could make that,
inadequate?
you could make that to where it is only for the structure that's existing on the survey. You
Okay.
know, the variance is only for that structure or something like that.
Okay. So then my amendment is that we approve the variance specifically for the structure that exists on the survey at this point. I would need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. And we have discussion.
My only question is if it's, has to go through zoning, planning and zoning to look at parking and all that, you know, to make sure that it's going to fit within the code, is that even necessary to add this amendment? Because it's going to be, the county's interest is protected through planning and zoning if it moves forward in a different direction.
Right, but then what you do when you allow the variance is then you allow them, if they decide to tear that down, then they can start building another structure and they can come up to that point where it is. At that point, even though they may go, well, we don't want you that close to the road, they can't stop it because we've allowed that variance to take place. So that's why I'm making it specific for that structure.
But they can't get any closer to the road than the existing structure. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
So whether it's a new structure or an old structure, it's in the same spot.
Maybe, but then, you know, if they build a larger structure, that you're right in the sense they're going to have to go back to them and get everything approved for the parking and so forth. But this just assures that they're sticking with what is what we're being told is the intended purpose, is to use that structure for the commercial use.
Mr. Chair, if I can just interrupt. So I know that
Please.
there's a few of you that are brand new, and just to kind of go over the process. So here today, we're here to hear the variance for the front setback. If that gets approved, the next step is the rezoning and the go through P&Z and the Board of County Commissioners, and that's for the BU1A zoning. If that gets approved by the board, the next step would be to submit a site plan for the review, and it's not just with zoning, it's all the county departments, fire, public works, and everybody for that to go through staff review and to make sure that it meets our codes and requirements. And that, you know, deals with making sure that there's enough parking, stormwater, and all that good stuff.
Is my amendment moot, or is it appropriate?
Well, the variance runs with the land, and so if you don't tie it to, you know, as depicted on the survey or the existing structure, then when it comes, so if something were to happen, the staff doesn't know if you meant it was the only structure for the existing, or is it a proposed structure that is to the future. So it just is a clarification for when staff is reviewing the next step in the process, because the variance, depending on how it's worded here today, can mean a future building. If not, it states existing or as depicted on the survey.
And also, you got to understand, depending on the future building they build, they might build something that could be more of a issue than the building that currently exists. If they build it taller, wider, et cetera, might have more of an issue. And so that's what I'm trying to protect against, not trying to cause any issues, but that's what my purpose is here.
Mr. Chair, again, can I understand who made the motion, who seconded?
For the amendment?
Yes.
For the amendment, I made the motion and Mr. McCann seconded.
Becky, can they do that? Can the chair make an amendment?
I know I can't make I can't make the initial motion, but I believe I can make an amendment to the motion.
Yes, he can make an amendment. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'd like to add something on the amended
Okay.
motion request. I believe that the initial motion includes the current structure because it was made based on the application and the what's depicted in the survey, and that structure is depicted in the survey. Furthermore, I'd hate to limit the property owner with repairs should something happen to that structure and they've run into some problem that they're going to be told that they can't make proper repairs because the new structure or a significant repair of the old structure might be arguably in violation of the variance. So I'm gonna support my initial variance request.
I don't think
Approve my
Yeah, I
initial
got you.
variance motion.
I don't think the amendment would preclude them from making repairs to the structure if it was damaged. It just precludes them from going in and tearing this one down and then building something else that close to the road.
And being the new guy, I'm not trying to rock the boat.
Yeah, you can rock any boats you want to rock. That's why you're here.
My only concern is for the property owner.
Yes.
And that is that there's already a number of steps that they have to go through if they're going to build something new. And so there's why create I will support the motion if that's what the board wants, but my concern is that we just create an undue level of bureaucracy for the property owner when, if they do want to build something new, they should have that right without having to go through, jump an extra hoop to be able to do it. Because I believe the county's interest will still be protected with all the levels that they have to go through.
Having sat here for a few years, I can tell you rules are manipulated in many situations, and I don't mean to keep looking that way. Nor you. Just most everybody's over there. Rules are manipulated in many cases so that people can do what they really want to do instead of necessarily what we're told is being done. And so we try to make sure that the interest of everybody is protected, that being the neighbors, safety, et cetera. Again, anytime you give a variance, and especially we're going 74% above what is required, anytime we're going above 50%, I get really nervous. And so I try to put in extra safeguards to assure that the safety is not going to be an issue. If we allow him to build that close to the road, he can build that close to the road, okay? And so it can be an issue in the future. That's the reason I'm doing it for that specific building. And I might get corrected in this one, if he wants to tear that down and build a new building, then that's going to be an issue he'll have to deal with, is that he's not going to build it that close to the road without coming back again and saying, I want to build this that close, and then we can take a look at it and see if we feel like it's a safety issue. That's my purpose. There will be 2 votes that we will take on this, just so everybody understands how this is done. I'm going to go through the 6 points. We will vote on the amendment first to see if the amendment is approved. If the amendment stands, then it becomes a part of it. If the amendment is not approved, then we vote on the original motion.
I have a quick question for
Please.
the county attorney. Under Robert rules, may I withdraw my second?
I have to look. Give me just a second.
Thank you.
You told me this is going to be this much fun.
And you're only on number 1.
While she's looking at, for the audience, our job is to talk these things out, give our viewpoints, and come up with what we feel like is best for the property owner, the builders, whoever, as well as the local community. We look at all kinds of aspects. Safety is primary, that it doesn't create a hazard or a safety issue to the community. Of course, neighbors, what they're having to deal with and what would they have to put up with, all of those things do come into play as we're discussing this. So some of this you may look at and go, well, that's, not something that's that important, but it's just all the aspects that we're weighing through. So please try to understand that as we're dealing with this.
Yes, you can withdraw your second.
I withdraw my second to the motion with the amended variance request.
Okay. Do we have another second to the amendment? All right, then the amendment fails. Here we go. 6 conditions, or 6 in your, each of you filled out a hardship worksheet. We are required to go through those 6 points on each of these situations. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. My understanding is that because the road has been moved closer to the structure since the structure was built, that would be, in my opinion, the special conditions or circumstances which come into play as we're considering this particular matter. Number 2, that special conditions and circumstances do not result of the actions of the applicant. The applicant did not build the structure, nor did they decide to build the road closer to the structure that existed. So they had nothing to do with that. Granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. If we approve or disapprove, we are not giving anyone any special privileges or rights that we would not give to anyone else. The literal enforcement of this provision of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under provisions of the chapter and will constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. In this particular situation, it would not deprive them of use of the property. It would deprive them of use of that facility to be a commercial facility, I think. And it may, at that point, create an unnecessary hardship. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. To allow it to be rezoned to the BU1A, it would need this variance, and that is the minimum requirement. That granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. As been discussed previously, there are other commercial properties in the area, so we're not putting a commercial property in the middle of a residential area. And according to their representative, he doesn't feel like it would be injurious to the area. Am I correct? All right. All right, we have a motion to approve the variance as depicted on survey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I will be a no. And your variance is approved. There you are. Thank you. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, item number 2, application number 2, variance application 22V00052, IR Tiki 2, LLC, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-2105B to permit a variance of 11.8 feet from the required 32.91 feet, 30% of the breezeway corridor on a riverfront property. Variance number 2, Section 62-14855A4A to permit a variance of 6.59 feet from the required 15-foot side south setback for a structure in a BU-1 general retail commercial zoning classification. It's located in tax ID number 2611662 in District 4.
Would the applicant please come to the podium? Sir?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is
Please.
Steve Monroe. I'm the president of Monroe Engineering. I'm the engineer of record for this project. I
And
reside
your
at
address,
3080
please.
Brandywine Lane, Melbourne, Florida.
Thank you, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
And how may we help you?
Thank you. This project is located on US 1, just north of Post Road. It's known as the old Captain Katana's project restaurant. It's now the new location of the Marker 99 restaurant. The current owners bought this property in 2020, and the original restaurant was built in 1978. They've done a lot of improvements and really made this restaurant a very good place now. One of the first things they did, they took the septic system offline, installed a new lift station and force main, so that was a win for the Indian River. It really was an upgrade. They connected the city of Melbourne utilities. The next item they wanted to do was take the existing dirt parking lot, which direct drains to the Indian River. They want to install a new pervious pavement parking lot, which would retain 100% of the stormwater runoff, which is another win for the Indian River. To do this, we started out in a site plan review, and during site plan review, planning noticed some things that we needed to take care of. One of them was a future land use. We've been to planning and zoning, and that was approved. We've been before the county commissioners, and that was approved.
I'm sorry, let me pause you for just a moment. If you would, just move that microphone a little closer to you. Thank you, sir.
Is that a little better?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. The other item was we needed two variants. One of them was the breezeway requirement. As noted, this building was built in 1978, and that portion of the code was codified in 1979. The variances request is 11.8 feet. Item 2, the second variance is a setback for the south setback line, which abuts residential. In this case, the code says we're required a 15-foot setback. Again, the building is existing, built in 1978. We're requesting a 6.59-foot setback, and again, that part of the code came in 1979. I do want to note that the owners are not proposing any new improvements along the south property line. Just want to make that on the record. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. I think staff recommended approval based on the survey that we submitted, and we have no objections to that. We'll support that.
You were in District 4, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. Was the breezeway constructed, the part of the variance that's being requested, was it the breezeway constructed along with the Tiki bar by an unlicensed contractor? Is that what part of this it's
True.
being considered?
The breezeway is the portion of the looking dead east, from this side is an open space on each side of the building. The existing building was there in 1978. It was purchased. The new owners purchased it in 2020, and they did provide new Tiki bars that are there. So when we say Tiki bars, the westerly one is a more of a canopy that you would commonly purchase at Costco or Lowe's. You walk in today, buy it, and walk out and install it. Staff have identified that we need to site plan those improvements, and that was one of the things that was red flagged. It affected our breezeway requirement. So.
And does it create any hardship for the adjacent, there's residences on that side, is that correct?
There is an existing residence on the south side of the existing restaurant. The Tikis are on the north side. That abuts a vacant lot that's zoned commercial, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Other questions? Ma'am? Gentlemen?
Sir, you're just, the code and the structure as exists now is how it existed prior to purchasing the property, is that correct?
The existing building, the restaurant itself, it exists as it was when it was purchased.
Nothing's changed in the setbacks or the breezeway since you purchased it?
The Tikis are new. They put those in when they installed, or when they purchased the property. So.
Okay. I'm asking if the Tiki, did that affect the breezeway or the side setback?
It did not affect the side setback, but it did affect the breezeway requirement.
So the construction of the Tiki, I would just say narrowed the breezeway some?
Correct.
Okay, and we're looking at a,
Keep in mind that the Tikis, always say Tiki is more of a canopy, so it's an open air space that flows through it.
right, it's not,
It's a roof
permanent
structure.
structure.
Yeah.
But there's sufficient space on both sides of the building for access for emergency personnel or safety egress or ingress.
Correct. There's, we've been working close with fire prevention in our site plan. I've met with them actually on this site. And one of the items, the improvements that's going to gain on this site by doing our parking lot is to be able to get emergency trucks in and out. And they are looking at access to be getting, in and around the building as one of the items that they're looking at. So that's part of our site plan review process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You say you're the contractor for?
I'm the engineer of record for this
You're the
project.
engineer of record.
Correct.
Did you have anything to do with the Tikis?
No, I did not.
Okay. And it is the installation of the Tikis that's made the requirement for the setbacks, am I correct?
I would have to review the survey to find out if we took that out of the equation to find out what was left over. So if we would meet that requirement. But yes, the Tikis are for sure in the equation.
Okay.
So
And they were built without a permit, is that correct?
that's correct.
And the code enforcement action is dealing with the fact that these were built without permit or built?
Yeah,
or
Code enforcement, we identified this and issued a letter to the owner, and within 10 days, we met with code enforcement on the site and reviewed a plan of action to corrective action to get these taken care of. Future land use change was one, a variance was another. Our next step is site plan approval, and then building permits, and that's our course of that we're following. And once those are achieved, the owners will be in good standing at that point.
Question, gentlemen? Even if we approve the variance, he's still got to get the site plan approved, and you guys could say no to the tiki huts, et cetera, or no?
This is under site plan review right now. This is what came up with the site plan review, was that it didn't meet the breezeway requirements. And then when we looked at it further, there was also encroachment to the south of the existing building, which we thought they ought to clean up too on that one.
So the side setback is on an existing building, correct?
Correct.
The only thing the tiki huts affected is the breezeway, correct? Okay. Okay. I'm just wanting to make sure I'm clear on what I'm talking about. And I'll just explain to you why I'm talking. I have major issues when people build stuff that they're not supposed to build the way they're supposed to build it. I get real cautious about it because we get it here all the time, where people build something, they know they're not supposed to build it, and then they build it and go, well, we'll just go and get a variance and they'll approve it because we've already built this thing. So we have to weigh, is that intent, is that purpose, and was it done on purpose for that, reason that they knew they wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. So that's the reasoning for my questions and what I'm dealing with in my mind, okay? Just so you know where I'm at here, okay?
Might I add that the owners have accepted responsibility. Like I said, we've taken positive action with code enforcement to take the steps necessary to get things corrected. And that's what I'm helping them with.
Can I ask you for a opinion?
Depends.
Okay. Do you think they built them because they knew they couldn't get them approved, or they just didn't think about it, and then once it came to light, they're going, oh, we need to fix this?
Quite frankly, this is an old site. It was built in 1978, so we're talking over 40 years old.
Right.
The condition it was when they took over ownership, which probably be questionable on a normal investor if it's worth it or not. You know, they've done a lot of work. They've painted, they've installed landscape, they've done upgrades. Some of these things, and I can't speak for the owner, may have been an oversight. Again, the Tiki in question is one that you can walk into Lowe's or Home Depot or Costco and walk out with. It's not a physically built structure, that kind of thing. It's a package structure. Now, not to mislead you, there is a Tiki hut behind that one that was built on existing pilings. There was an existing overhang that was dilapidated and broken, falling down, unsafe. They removed that, and they replaced that with the new Tiki.
And they did that also without permits, et
That's
cetera?
correct.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions I have. Anyone else have questions?
Just a quick one.
Please.
Just to clarify, you had mentioned that the Tiki and the breezeway were both, added on, and the Tiki you already said that the Tiki has no impact on any residents. Does the breezeway have any effect on any of the residential house next to you?
I don't feel it does, because the breezeway is a east-west between the US 1 and the river, an open space. And in this case, there's no residences between US 1 and the river. North of the site, it's vacant, commercial, and then south is a residence that's already developed. So, long-time resident there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Please stand to
Thank
the
you,
side
Mr.
for me,
Chairman.
please. And when you do come to the mic, this is our procedure, just so you know. I have you stand to the side, and if nobody comes, you don't have to sit down and get up. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Please come to the podium. I'm going to ask you to please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Glenn Bryan, 4255 North US 1. I live on the south side.
Hang on. Please raise your right hand.
Oh, yes,
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give us Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
Are you in favor or opposition?
Well, I'm sort of both. I hate to say that.
Okay.
I'm in favor. I've lived here for 20 years next to this place, and it used to be Katana's. And I've never complained one time. I've never complained since these folks have come in. They've cleaned that place up. They've made it so much better than it was. And that's why I'm here supporting them. I mean, I'm a little house, my little paradise right side of them, and I love it. And I watch what they're doing. If they start moving my way, that's why I'm here. But I spent hours. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a real estate person, but just trying to figure out what this was all about. And because they're going to they want a setback. The setback on the south side. Well, there's only 8 feet there right now, 8.41 feet between their building and our fence. And I say our fence because it's been there before all of us were here, and we need that fence. At any rate, there's only 8.4 feet there. And so they're getting beat on 2 sides. One is they're supposed to have 15 feet between their building and my property, our fence, whatever it is. Well, this was built a long time ago. So I understand that. The 8.4 feet, I can put up with that. I don't have a problem. But it sounded like they're moving further toward me. That's what got me really involved in it. And then I started, as I read and tried to figure out what a breezeway was, and I saw that anything above 4 feet is blocking the breezeway. So and they've got to have, what is it? The breezeway's got to be 32.91 feet somewhere. Well, on my side, they've only got 8 feet, I told you, and in the middle of that 8 feet is a big tree. That's against the breezeway business. But I don't want to see that tree cut down. It gives shade to olives. It gives shade to their customers. It gives shade and privacy to me from all their people sitting out on their deck. And so my issues, I'm supportive of them in all this. I don't want to be against doing this, but I'd like something in there kind of clarifying that building of theirs is not going to move any closer to me. And that's the way I see it.
Let me help you with that.
Okay.
Okay, the variance requesting the 6.59 feet from the required 15-foot setback is just dealing with the existing structure that is there. They're not asking to build anything closer to you or anything new. They're just legitimizing, for lack of better terms, the structure that already exists.
It took a long time to figure that out for a regular person looking at this. It doesn't say that anywhere. You got to go to the surveys and look at all this stuff. And I had basically a week to fiddle with this.
Right.
You know, I didn't have much time. And
The breezeway situation, I don't think affects your property because it's not moving closer to you or whatever. It's just something they built.
no, but it's in that.
It's
between. I mean, the breezeway has to be somewhere. It's not on the north side because of the Tiki business and stuff.
Yeah,
Apparently,
stay with the mic. There you go. No, stay with the mic. Okay.
I don't hear well. Please forgive me.
Yeah, that's okay. Just don't run off away from the microphone.
Okay.
Okay.
At any rate, the way I read everything and trying to read what breezeways were, you know, it has to be somewhere. Well, if it isn't on the north side, because they've got a Tiki there or whatever that raises up to below, you know, nothing's supposed to be above 4 feet from what I saw on breezeway. And I'm for them. I don't want them to have to tear that Tiki down. That's wonderful. But anyway, I just want to make sure that building isn't going to move, building or the deck. They have a big deck the whole length of that property, which is wonderful. They tore a lot of stuff out of there and built it back, and it's better. And I can tell you, during the hurricane 20 years ago, it picked up part of their deck, like 2,000 pounds of it, and dropped it right on my roof and went right through my roof. Now, this is way prior to them. This is the previous owners. They've corrected a lot of that stuff. But I'm very watchful about all this.
Sure.
And I'd like to see something here about what happens, you know, if they do decide to build some more, or if they sell the property to somebody else. You know, am I going to be back in here trying to do something about that?
Hang on. Mr. Thomas, do you want to address any of his concerns?
Well, I guess my question is to staff, to address his concern, wouldn't that have to be, they would have to legally come back to get a variance or?
That's correct. If they're trying to expand into the south setback and make more building into that 15-foot setback, they'd have to come back and get another variance to whatever they're expanding on. Right now, it's just legitimizing the existing building as it appears on the survey.
Thank you. So I don't think this adversely affects you at all from what they're saying?
I'm sorry.
They couldn't build anything closer to you at this point.
Yeah. Good. Okay. I mean, I like them and everything. They're full all the time. These people have done a great job. I just don't want to see something coming my way and not stand up here and talk to you about it.
Thank you, sir.
you
Appreciate
very
your time. Did anybody else have a question for him or anything? Okay. Anyone else like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Come back, sir. Any final comments, sir?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to add one thing. Our preference would be to have these variances both approved as presented. But I do want to point out, and staff can probably help us with the math on this, that the existing building alone, I'm not sure meets the breezeway requirements. So we'd have to look at that math. So if it does not, we would still need a variance for that item. Thank you. Just quick looking at it, I think we would be around that 28 number instead of 30.
Gentlemen?
The lot is on the survey where the breezeway we're measuring is 109.71 feet per the surveyor. And 30% equals 32.91. And then we subtracted out all the different buildings in the Tiki hut from that, added them all up, and we came up with, you had a breezeway of 21.11 feet. So that was subtracted from the 32.91. That's where we came up with the 1180 for the breezeway, the 30% that you're lacking.
That's correct. I don't disagree with that at all.
Okay.
I guess my thoughts are if we take the Tiki's out of the equation, what are we left with at that point? So,
The Tiki hut is in the equation. It was a structure that's there. It's in the breezeway.
correct.
Anything
Thank
else?
you, Mr. Aaron. That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Thank you. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
So just a disclosure, I did receive a call from Summit Shaw, who is the owner or one of the owners of the restaurant. We did not discuss I received a text, I should clarify, from him regarding this issue. We did not discuss it other than he just asked if I had any questions. We were supposed to meet but never did. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. But I'd like to make a motion for approval as presented for the variances for a breezeway corridor and a structure in a BU1 zoning classification.
We have a motion by Mr. Thomas to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Mallard. Okay, that's okay. Just real quick, I'm sure you're familiar with sunshine laws, correct? Okay. We have to be incredibly careful. We are not allowed to discuss any cases that have not come before us outside this arena. If we do, then we're in violation of the law. So anytime you get text, anytime you get phone calls, even when I visited the property and the owners come out to see me, I'll look at them and say, hey, I'm just wanting to look around, but I can't talk to you about it. You have to be very, very careful, otherwise people perceive an impropriety, and I'll refer to our attorney to make sure I'm not saying anything incorrect here.
No, that's correct. You need to, you shouldn't discuss with anybody anything that may come before you that's been noticed for a public meeting,
So
or that may be noticed for a
point of
public meeting, sorry.
clarification, can they talk to me about it, but I can't give an opinion as far as how I would vote. I can listen, somebody can show me their property, or show me what the issue is, but as long as I'm not allowed to give a opinion.
No discussion.
Correct, okay. From my side.
Yes, but I think one of the points that Mr. Rhodes is making is that we have to be very careful. Not only is it actual conflict of interest and impropriety, it's also the appearance of such, which is a violation of our policies and procedures within Brevard County. So meeting, and thank you for disclosing, but meeting outside of a public meeting when we know that something is coming before the board could be perceived as conflict of interest or as something that could be viewed as untoward, even if it's innocent and it's not. It's still a violation if it appears that it could be.
I appreciate the clarification.
Certainly.
My past experience with the city of Melbourne, we were able to do that, but we just had to disclose that we had met the person.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I'm just clarifying so that everybody's aware.
You just get me back for that first motion, I got it. It's okay.
Oh, be quiet. I much appreciate your disclosing that. I think that was important and needed to have happened. But also, it can be perceived, even if you're not saying anything, as them persuading you in a particular way. And that's what we got to be careful of. We don't want anybody to say, well, they got to talk to you and I didn't get to talk to you and give you my opinion. And so that's what you've got to watch out for. So I don't think you did anything wrong, and I appreciate you bringing that before us. So don't perceive it as that. I'm just clarifying. Again, we've got a lot of new people on the board right now. So when something comes up, I try to clarify those things so that everybody's aware and it's not something that drops through the cracks. We have to deal with at a later time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second in a meeting that's being a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. And let's go through our 6 points. Can we do that? All right. That special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. I don't think in this case there's any special circumstances or conditions, with the exception of the building was built prior to the people acquiring it, therefore, the structure that exists was already in the position that it was in. That would be the only special condition or circumstance that I see. That special circumstances, conditions do not result from the actions of the applicant. That is two-part. Part of this is not a result of the applicant because they didn't build the existing structure. Part of it is a result of the applicant because they built the tiki huts without proper permits and is required then the first of the two variances. That granting the variance request will not confirm the applicant in the special privilege as denied by the provision of the chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. I don't think it is giving them any special privileges. We've not said, hey, you know, they're really important people, so we're going to let them have it where somebody else we wouldn't. That literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in identical zoning classification of the provisions of the chapter and will constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. Number one would not, the first one would not, even if we said no, would not deprive them of use of the property. They would just have to take their tiki huts out, okay? So they'd still be able to use the property. The second would be, in my opinion, unnecessary and undue hardship because you'd make them move a building that's already been in existence for a long period of time. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, and structure. Again, it is the variance that would be required for them to continue to use the structure as it is now. That granting of the variance is in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. It was very important that I heard from you today because you are the neighbor that it would affect the most. And hearing from you that, you know, you're happy with improvements they've made and so forth tells me that it would not be injurious to the neighborhood, and it's not getting closer to the highway or anything of those natures that would cause it to be a detriment. All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to just add a few things.
Please.
Based on the math that was presented to us about the necessity of an 11.8-foot variance, we still have a breezeway totaling 21.11 feet. We know on one side, the south side, there's a 6.59 variance. So the north side of the property, without doing the exact math, would have a substantially higher breezeway opening. So I don't have an issue with the request.
And let me make a point, especially, again, this is for our new members. When you have multiple variances requested, you can disapprove of one and approve the other, okay? Unless someone someone says, hey, I want number one to be taken separately, we generally do them together, okay? But if someone on the board says we want to do these separately, then we do that, okay? I'm assuming we're good to take these as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Then we have a motion and a second to approve the two variance requests that are before us. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And your variance request is approved. There you are. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, variance, item number 3, application 23V00004. Catherine S. Baldwin requests variances of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62, 1344, to permit a variance of 5 feet from the required 75-foot lot width for an RU-1-11 single-family residential zoning classification. Variance number 2, section 62-1344, to permit a variance of 10 feet from the required 75-foot lot depth for an RU-1-11 single-family residential zoning classification. And variance number 3, section 62-1344, to permit a variance of 3,144 square feet from the required 7,500 square foot minimum lot size in an RU-1-11 single-family zoning classification. It's located on tax account number 2514632 in District 2.
Would the applicant please come to the podium? Please state your name and address for the record.
Catherine Baldwin, 1850 West Virginia Avenue, Merritt Island, Florida.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes, sir.
And how may we help you?
I purchased my home in 1998. In 2017, Hurricane Irma flooded it. I've been going through the Rebuild Florida to assist me in replacing my home, and we put in the blueprints for the house. Everything seemed to be going through until all of a sudden it comes out that the lot is too small for a house. This house has been in existence before the building department was in Brevard.
You're okay.
I was told that I had a vested interest in this house. I've had it homesteaded. In 2017, I got a permit to replace the roof on my house that they're telling me is never supposed to have been there. And I'm hoping that you will approve the variance to be able to allow Rebuild Florida to come in and give me back my home.
Mr. McCann. And don't make me cry, by the way.
Not good with public speaking.
I did get a chance to visit the site, and I took a look at your home, and it is definitely in need of repairs, possibly rebuild, so I get that. The plan, is the plan to rebuild the home any wider or larger than the current existing home?
No, what they've had to do is, it was just in December that it was suddenly, oops, you can't build, period. On the last version of the blueprints that they put in, they said would be acceptable to fit the inside the easements and also the minimum square footage that a home needs to be. And it will raise it because I took 1.5 feet inside. I had catfish inside of my house from Irma and again from Ian. So they will be raising it so that the water that drains off from the marina behind me won't affect my structure anymore.
So you just want to get a variance to legitimize what you have existing now as far as sizes and setbacks go, and then there will be a rebuild.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And George Ritchie had gone through the plans before he retired because he made them redo them the final time to ensure that once the variance goes through, that plan would be accepted.
Okay. Other questions? If you just stand to the side for a moment. Anyone here that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Come on back. Any final statement?
Two of my neighbors had said that they would try to come to speak for me. We're an old neighborhood. We actually know our neighbors. So I'm hoping to get to go back home.
Thank you for taking the time to come.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Your pleasure.
I'll make a motion to approve all 3 variance requests as depicted in the survey.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Mr. McCann has made the motion. Ms. Mallard has seconded. Is there any discussion? All right.
I'll just say that when I visited the location, the back of the residence opens up or is adjacent to the parking lot of a marina, so that wouldn't affect anything. The one side of the property is adjacent to an abandoned house that it looks inhabitable. And then the remaining, there's sufficient space where it's hard to even see any other properties or structures. So I just don't see how it would have a negative impact on anything.
In my opinion, this is one of those situations that meets the pure definition of what the hardship is. So, number 1, special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land structures or buildings, the applicable zoning classification. Her property was in the configuration that it is for some time. Other properties may have the proper square footage or width and length, but hers was designed this way. And so I think it certainly has special circumstances and conditions that apply here. That the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the applicant. She didn't create the land or the lot, so she did not create this situation. That granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter of other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. I don't believe that does confer any special privilege on her if we approve this variance request, as we have done these previously before. The literal enforcement of this provision or chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter, and will constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship to the applicant, and I believe that it would do all of those things. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, building, or structure, and that is indeed the case. And that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. I don't see that granting this variance is going to be detrimental to anyone, as Mr. McCann has stated previously, and I believe it would be in harmony with the neighborhood there. All right. And everybody muted their phone but me. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And it is approved. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance request?
Yes. Variance item number 4, variance application 23V00007, Clearlake Commercial Center Incorporation. Request for variances of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-1483, 5A4B, to permit a variance of 2.24 feet from the required 5-foot side north setback for a structure. Variance number 2, Section 62-1483, 5A4F, to permit a variance of 0.22 feet from the required 25-foot side street south setback for a structure in a BU-2 retail warehousing and wholesale commercial zoning classification. Is located in tax count number 2424131 in District 2.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jennifer Altreche. My address is 508 North Harbor City Boulevard, Melbourne, Florida, 32935.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
How may we help you?
Thank you. I'm here today. I represent, as Mr. Bodie stated, Clearlake Commercial Center, Inc. The structure, it appears that it is over 2.24 feet into the setback requirements on the north end of the property and 0.2 feet into the setback requirement at the south. This is a warehouse structure, so it was built that way. The structure has been there for 40-plus years. My client has owned the property since 1984. Nothing has been improved or changed, it's just a warehouse with different units in it. There's no plans of making it larger or smaller. It's literally, we're just asking for a variance on that small portion that for some reason the structure was built in the setback. Not sure if there was any change, requirements back when it was first built in 1973, but now it's a little over, and we want to make sure that the building's in compliance and make sure that, everything's good when it comes to the county and the city.
You're in District 2, Mr. McCann. It's all you today.
As always, I don't have any questions.
Thank you.
Any board member have questions? Please stand to the side for a moment. Anyone here desire to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? And seeing none, please come on back. Any final statement?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You may be seated. What's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve both variance requests as depicted on the survey.
Second.
Who did the second? Thank you, sir. We have a motion by Mr. McCann to approve the variance request as depicted on survey. We have a second by Mr. Thomas. Is there any discussion? Then we will move to the 6 points. Special conditions and circumstances exist or are not applicable to other lands, buildings, or structures in the same applicable zoning classification. In this case, the special circumstances would be that this building already was in existence prior to the current owners owning it, correct? And that would be the special circumstances. The special circumstances condition do not result of the actions of the applicant. As we just stated, it was already there. They did not build this. That granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege as denied by the provisions of this chapter to the lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification, and it would not confer any special privilege on them. That little enforcement of the provision of this chapter would deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same identical zoning classification under the provisions of the chapter, and would constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant to require the applicant to remove a building that has been in existence for some time would, in my opinion, provide an unnecessary and undue hardship. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, and structure, and I believe that it is. And that granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. Again, this building has been in existence for some time now. I don't see how granting this variance would be injurious to anyone at this point. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And your variance passes. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance request?
Yes, variance item number 4, variance application 23V00008, Lynn A. Hartman and Carl K. Hartman. Request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62, 1371-5A to permit a variance of 7 feet from the required 10-foot side south setback for an accessory structure. Variance number 2, Section 62-1371-5A to permit a variance to allow an accessory structure to be located forward of the front building line of the principal structure in an RU-2-4 low-density multifamily residential zoning classification. And this is located on tax account number 3008507 in District 3.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, this is item number 5,
I
not
was
item number
about
4.
to do that and say, I'm sorry if I'm improperly correcting, but I believe this is item
Sorry,
number 5.
variance number 5.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ma'am, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Anna Long. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Dean Mead, located at 420 South Orange Avenue, Orlando, Florida, 32001, excuse me.
That's okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
And I don't know if I had to have you do that, but I always do.
So it's
that's
all,
okay.
it's fine. It's cool.
How may we help you?
My clients here today are Lynn and Carl Hartman. They're both here if you want to hear directly from them. However, they would like two variances, as staff summarized, one from the side setback of 10 feet to 3 feet, and we had a letter of no opposition from that adjacent property and are on file with staff. I believe they've shared that with you. And the second is to have an accessory structure in front of the primary structure, which I was schooled, didn't know, that when you have a home abutting A1A, as it does, you really have a choice of picking your frontage.
Yes.
And the previous owners selected the frontage as that, close to the highway, because they also have another dwelling there. So as a result, putting anything oceanside would have been in conflict with the regulations. My clients purchased the home with its existing structures in 2021. The Tiki hut was built in 2016. So they took with it, as it is, there was no changes to it. There was a title report done, et cetera. There was nothing indicating there was a code issue for them to have known. And so they simply want to make sure that they are in compliance. They received a notice of violation from the code board, and that's why we're here.
Okay. And you are in my district, so hello. Again, they did not build the Tiki hut,
No, they
correct?
didn't.
It was already in existence.
That is correct.
And the code violation is now in place for that Tiki hut, am I
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay. That's all I got.
Mr. Chair, just for reference, it's not a tiki hut, it's a cheeky hut.
Yes, it's
It's on,
I seen that, but it says Tiki hut here. But I seen it said Cheeky hut. And I've been told that the difference is it floats.
No, a cheeky hut, I'm gonna get it wrong. Okay, a cheeky hut is something that, first of all, has to be constructed by someone of the Seminole tribe. And there's another, am I correct? I'm looking at you, you're not gonna help me, thanks, okay, whatever. It has to,
He's going,
it
so
has
I've
to
been
be-
told, I can't
Yeah,
confirm or
and you
deny.
have to have almost like, and this, I don't mean to be insulting to anyone, it's almost like a taxi cab medallion.
Yeah.
You've heard of those? It's kind of like that. So anybody that builds one has to have that certain licensure to do so. Yeah, so that's,
well, that's cool.
yeah, okay. That's all I know.
Any questions from anybody on the board?
Okay,
Mr. Chair, we just heard from our code enforcement folks. So the difference between the Cheeky and the Tiki is that when they added the electrical component of that, it turns into a Tiki hut, not a Cheeky hut.
Okay. So they added an electrical component to it, which made it
A Tiki
A
hut
tiki
now.
Tiki
hut.
hut.
Which if they remove it becomes a cheeky hut.
Okay. And it doesn't really matter, does it? Okay. All right, there's no questions from the board. If you can stand to the side for just a moment. Is there anyone here in the audience that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to the Cheeky Tiki, whatever kind of hut that it happens to be? Please come back. Ma'am? That's you, yeah, okay. Nobody raised a hand. We're good. Any final comments?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. You may be seated. What's your pleasure? I can't make a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir,
I will move for approval of the two variances for an accessory structure in an RU2-4 low-density multifamily residential zoning classification,
As depicted on the survey.
as depicted on the survey.
thank you. Make sure when you make motions, you do include those words. They are very, very important. Otherwise, all kinds of things can happen, okay? So we have a motion by Mr. Thomas to approve the variances as depicted on survey. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Newman. He's learned he's got to say that faster. He gets out seconded. Okay. All right. Is there any discussion? All right. We've been here too long. Okay, here we go. That special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, buildings, structures in the same applicable zoning classification. I don't think there's anything, I've got weird stuff going on in my head. I don't think there's anything that is special except for the fact that this was pre-existing. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. They did not build it. It was already there. Granting granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant or any special privileges that is denied by the provisions of this chapter. The other building structures are identical zoning classification. We are not giving them any special privileges or rights in this case. Literal enforcement of the provision of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in identical zoning classification under provisions of this chapter and will constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. In this case, they would have to remove a hut that's been there for 7 years, and that would certainly, in my opinion, be an unnecessary hardship. That the variance granted is the minimum variance to make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure, and it is. And that granting the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and such variance will not be injurious to the area involved and otherwise detrimental to public welfare. Obviously, it's been there for 7 years, so I wouldn't see that it would be detrimental to anyone or anything there. Got it in. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any help? Opposed? Thank you. There are none. Your variance has been approved. I am going to ask for a 3-minute recess. If anyone needs to take a restroom break or something, we will reconvene in 3 minutes. I now call this meeting back to order. Thank you very much. Mr. Bodie, we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance.
Yes, item number 6, variance application 23V00009, Jeremy Coxstone and Amber Camari, request variance chapter 62, article 6, Brevard County Code, section 62-2100.5, 1D, to permit a variance of 228 square feet over the 1,280 square feet, 50% of the living area of the principal structure allowed for an accessory structure in an RR-1 rural residential zoning classification, and this is located in tax account number 2702772 in District 5.
All right, one at a time. Please state your name and address for the record.
Jeremy Coxstone, 4185 Carrollwood Drive, Melbourne, Florida.
Ma'am?
Amber Coxstone, Comrie's Old, sorry, 4185 Carrollwood Drive.
Both of you, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
I do.
And how may we help you?
Yes, we contracted a contractor by the name of Backyard Buildings, or Green Construction, as it's listed in BCPOA, for initially 2 24 by 40 buildings. That's what we assigned the contract with him for, and then we later were informed through the building department that that was too large, and we were granted access, or granted 26 by 40. When the contractor was doing the work, he sent a subcontract concrete guy out, and he, I guess, formed the concrete form incorrectly at the wrong size, I guess. And then now, having gone back and traced through everything, realizing he didn't call in the proper inspections in the right order, and then they ended up pouring the concrete and building the building all at a 30 by 50 instead of a 26 by 40. And it wasn't until we called in the final inspection that it became knowledge to us that he skipped the form board survey, which would have, I guess, identified that they had formed that slab too big from the get-go. We've also, the concrete contractor also installed a temporary culvert at the road with dirt to get the concrete trucks to come in. And then since all this has unfolded, he's pretty much run out on us for any form of rectification on the problem. And he was the one who was supposed to remove that temporary culvert and has not yet. We met with code enforcement this morning about that issue, and he has granted us access 30 days to kind of figure out what's going to go on here. If the result is that we have to remove that building with its entirety to build it to the right size, obviously we'll have to be able to get all of the building debris, the concrete debris removed, and then new concrete formed in, which would be, quite a substantial cost to us, seeing as how this gentleman is not willing to work with us any further. We went under contract June 1st, and it was kind of a really, really long process. We were referred to this gentleman by a neighbor a few doors down on the left, on the other side of the street, who had said he did a great job with his work, and then, pretty much didn't do that for us. So we're requesting the variance in hopes to not have to remove this building in its entirety, and then rebuild it from the ground up, rip everything back out to the bare dirt, reform everything, find a contractor willing to do all that again for us, and then, possibility of even being able to afford to do all that again.
Right. Ma'am, do you have anything to add to it at this point?
I just wanted to note that the building is 228 square feet over what is allowed for our home size, which I guess equates to about 18% over, which is what the variance we're requesting is. Although it's a financial hardship, it would also cause a lot of additional construction traffic and a lot of hassle, even on the neighbors to have to, jackhammer all that concrete and haul it out. And it's just a lot. So we would appreciate, if you guys would consider approving the variance.
And one more note for myself. when you're staring at the building, you know, it's really only 4 feet difference from the street view. And we have photos, if you guys would like to review them, of street view, how the building is shown. And it makes no difference from street view, at least going back. We have talked to the neighbor directly to the right of us, who has his alpacas pretty much right up next to that building. And he says he's completely fine with it and the size that it is, and would prefer it not to have to be taken down for all that construction to take place next to his animals again.
Just so you know, you're welcome to submit any photos that you want to submit. However, any photos that you give us, I have to keep for the record.
That's fine. They're all here for you.
That's your
May
call.
I walk up?
Please. And then I'll go that way with them. While we're looking over these, and everyone has to see them in order for me to go to the final of this, okay? You are in District 5, Mr. Newman.
All right. And I'm very interested to see those pictures, so can't wait for them to go over here. Number one, just to clear out like what's going on. What is the structure for? Like, what is it? A garage? Is it?
Currently, it's storing our father-in-law and our RV inside it.
And there should be a picture.
And there's a picture in there showing that.
Okay. All right, perfect. So it's a shelter. All right,
Correct.
perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'm very familiar with your street, and again, I don't think it's what do you call it? Out of the normal for that part of the area. So, so I want to understand kind of the story a little bit more and understand kind of what happened there. So from my understanding, the concrete company poured an oversized slab.
That's correct.
And then from that point on, nobody really noticed, the contractor, nobody really noticed that it was much larger, just continued to build the structure without.
That's correct.
Okay. And there wasn't any leftover, room, the roof wasn't too short from what it was normally at. You guys didn't notice this until an inspector came?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then I'm trying
from our perspective, if you were to hire like a company to build you a home,
sure,
you would trust that company to build you the home you asked them to build you. You wouldn't. I wouldn't expect myself to go out there and be hand measuring every single thing every time that they show up, ensuring that they're doing the proper job. We hired them with the trust that they were going to provide us what we were paying them for.
Sure. Oh, no, I understand that. I'm more surprised that the contractor didn't have any sort of like, it's going to be a little bit of extra material. It's going to be a little bit smaller than you expected because for some reason we have this extra space,
Right.
My family's done building construction type of stuff. So I'm surprised a little bit on some of that. But that being said, because 228, square feet, it's not necessarily small, but all right. I just wanted to really kind of get an understanding of all of that. I'll probably have more for discussion, but I'm good for now for questioning.
Sir?
Just wanted to clarify and make sure that, I know you have the neighbor with the alpacas. Have you had any other comments from any other neighbors or?
I believe we have some neighbors here speaking in opposition.
Okay. And what's on the other side? I know Carol was on one side. What's on the back side?
Our property backs directly to a mobile home park that's not publicly owned. It's a privately owned street. But there's quite a bit of like trees and shrubbery between the two that kind of guard even the appearance of what's there from the other side.
Is that your property or is that an easement or what's that?
So from the back of that building, I don't know exact numbers, but I would say there's at least 30 feet from the back of the building to our property line behind us. And then it goes into a privately owned swale by the mobile home park behind us.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Curiosity, metal or?
It's a metal building.
It's a metal building?
Yes, sir.
And I built metal buildings. They're specific size. You can't add 228 square feet. You have to order it bigger. So obviously somebody at some point knew that they were building a building bigger. Did he come to you and go, it's going to cost more?
He did not.
So you did not pay any more for the building?
We've only given him a 50% deposit up until now. And pretty much as the last screw is going in, he was knocking on our door asking for the final payment. And I told him we would like to wait to pay the final payment till the final inspection was passed just as we, been told by family members and such, like.
Right,
you don't wanna
but he didn't increase his cost to you,
No, sir.
et cetera. But the reason I was asking if it was metal or wood, because wood, your trusses are gonna change, but you can change size on wood pretty easily. Metal, you can't. I've personally built metal buildings.
Yes, sir.
You can't. You gotta know that's the size building that's coming in. You gotta know it's not was it 26 by 40 is what you're supposed to build?
Yes, sir.
You got to know it's not a 26 by 40. Now it's what width is it?
30 by 50.
30 by 50. I mean, you have to order that building that size. So the contractor had to know that. You didn't get any notification that this was going to be a 30 by 50 building instead of 26 by 40?
No, sir.
You've seen no documentation, no paperwork, no designs, nothing?
We didn't even get an updated contract since the initial application was for two 26 by 40s, and the NOC that we signed was for two 24 by 40s. And then the county had told us that we couldn't have two buildings, we could only have one. Well, he informed the contractor informed us, and we said, okay, one is fine, we'll go with that. And then.
And when you went to one, do you have something in writing that says 26 by 40?
Nothing that was updated other than the approved permit by the county.
And what were the two building sizes that you said they said no to?
They were just two 26 by 40s instead of one. So we were just going to do a duplicate 26 by 40 instead of.
So you went from two 26 by 40s to one 26 by 40.
Correct.
And then somehow it ended up.
A 30 by 50.
How much?
A 30 by 50.
A 30 by 50.
Yes, sir.
4 feet wider, 10 feet longer.
I'm trying to gather in my mind what contractor would build a larger building than you asked for.
I have his phone number if you'd like to reach out to him.
I can't do that.
Maybe he'll
I'm not. I can't take a recess and go call this guy. It's not proper. I can't fathom that he would build a building bigger than you wanted and not charge you additional for it. He certainly knew it was bigger than what you ordered.
So when we spoke to him after this has all come to light, he stated that once he realized that the concrete was built too big, it would cost him more money, that he chose to build it bigger because he said it would cost him more money to tear all the concrete out. So when it all came to light, we were saying, why was this done? And he said, well, once I realized my guy screwed up, we just built the building and hoped that it would go because it would cost me more money to send somebody out there, tear all the concrete, reform everything. Because as you see in the inspections, he skipped the inspection that would catch the size of this building. And then the county asked the contractor to get a new updated form board survey post-construction. And that's in the Brevard County website as well under our permit number, and shows that it was bigger when it was sent off to the county, and then that's where it was kicked back to the contractor and said that it would be failed, and that's when we found out about a whole variance process. My wife actually went in and spoke with the gentleman over there on the right, and he helped her fill out the paperwork in hopes to, whatever.
You spoke to Mr. Bodie, correct?
I did,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to make sure the record knows the gentleman on the right.
I apologize. He didn't have a nameplate in front of him. I apologize.
So, I've just got all kinds of stuff going through my head right now. Am I by myself, or is this? It's not making sense to me. Go ahead, sir.
Do you happen to have a sales contract or anything from your initial purchase of the building?
It's the permit application is what we signed with him as our contract. That's when he came to our house and gave us the number for the initial two 26 by 40s. That's what we signed as our contract with him, and that was all. And he had us sign an NOC for $64,000 for two 26 by 40s, but then never had us update that NOC when it went to one 26 by 40 that was approved per the permit. That was our other question, is if the variance is denied, is there a way to retract that NOC in case he decides he wants to put a lien on our house for a total
that's
of...
an attorney question. We can
Understood.
answer that one for you.
Mr. Chair, I just, any documents that are submitted for the board for the review at this meeting becomes public record, so we'll need a copy of that. So just, like the pictures that you guys
Yes.
reviewed.
Yeah, I told
we'll
him we
need
had to keep the pictures.
Yeah, so if you show the board any documents that you have, we'll need to have a copy of that.
And we printed all these documents directly from the Brevard County website.
Okay.
Right, but you have nothing, all you have, and this is why I'm going to say I don't really need to see this. The only thing you have is 2 26 by 40 buildings being built. You have nothing showing a single 26 by 40 being built or the 30 by 50. You have nothing showing any of those things.
No, and I didn't print them out, but this gentleman was extremely hard to reach. I could give you my cell phone to look through, and you'd see 100 text messages with no responses.
Not unless you want to leave me your cell phone. Which I
But
don't think you want to
he
do.
wouldn't answer phone calls, he wouldn't answer texts, and then when he finally said, hey, we're ready to do your building, we were just so excited. We were like, let's come get it done.
Wow. Yeah, but I can't imagine, again, no offense to you, maybe you just are one of those people that just believes everybody's honest and you go, hey, just do it. There's no way I would have anybody build something without having something in front of me saying, this is what you're building, this is the size you're building, and this is the price you're charging me. I mean, he could charge you.
I'm a prior roof salesman and from when I was in Arkansas, and everything was a handshake deal. So that's just kind of the way I've always known things. Somebody gives you their word, that's what it's
Welcome
worth.
to the new world.
I mean, I'm talking $50,000 roof contracts that
Yeah,
the guy would laugh at you if you asked him to sign a contract, but if you shook his hand, he was good for the money.
What state was that in?
Arkansas.
Yeah, you're in Florida. I wouldn't even do that in my home state, which is Indiana. And we used to back in the day. We did. That's the way business was done. Unfortunately, you can't because here's the situation that we get into. We've got, because there's no documentation, we just have to take your word that you thought it was going to be a 26 by 40 building and that this contractor is eating the cost of the extra concrete, the cost of the extra metal, because I can promise you, because I've built, again, metal buildings, the difference between a 26 by 40 and a 30 by 50 is substantial.
Yes. When we calculated it, it's approximately $14,000 and an upgrade cost.
And you're saying he's eating all of that.
Well, I won't say that he's eating it. I'll say we can't get in touch with him since he's tried to knock on our door and ask us for the money, and then all of this came to light and we failed all of our inspections and we were asking him to come rectify the problems. He has been vanished.
I'm back to you.
Yeah. And just to be clear, he's the one who filled out the permits, or not filled out, you signed them.
That's correct.
Okay. And
It was permitted through his company.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. No, I just want to make sure that that's perfectly clear. This
That's
man knew what
correct.
he was doing by your
And
testimony.
he is a general contractor.
Right. Oh, no, yeah. We could get into licensure, but that's it's a bizarre situation. It's a bizarre one, but I'm going to save for discussion. That's my thoughts. Yeah.
And I don't know, Miss Attorney, shoot me if this is wrong. You have talked to the DBPR about this company, correct?
We have not yet. We're waiting to see what comes
Make
of the
that phone
variance.
call.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I'm out of line, you can throw something at me. But okay, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Sir.
I would suggest that they contact Brevard County contractor licensing to see if there's any outcome or resolution for that.
When we met with code enforcement this morning in regard to the culvert out front, he gave us a card with an email on it and said to reach out to that contact about reporting the contractor for what's gone on so far.
Put that on. I have a couple questions now. What was the original purpose of wanting to construct two 26 by 40s?
Initially, our father-in-law, or my father-in-law, her parents lived in IRCC, and they were keeping their motorhome in a enclosed storage in Vieira, and it was costing him quite a lot of money every month. So he's retired. He wanted to be able to put his RV in one side, and then he wanted to put like manual woodworking tools in the other side as kind of like a retirement like recreational thing. And then once it came to light, we could only have one 26 by 40. Almost simultaneously, her parents decided to sell the house they have here and buy a property in Istapoga in Sebring on the water. So he has moved all that, and the house he lives in now has a massive shed where he keeps all his woodworking tools. So now just his RV was meant to stay on the on half of it, and then the other RV was meant to stay on our half. We wanted a second 26 by 40 for ourselves with the future intention of putting like a larger offshore boat, but we only had a small 18-foot boat. So when we did the math, our current RV, when you put the boat and because we have a slide-in truck camper, it's only like 20 feet long, but it's got an overhang, and the 18-foot boat that we did have that we now have sold slid perfectly underneath it at 37 feet. So that's why we only needed the 40 feet on our side.
What was the original cost for the two?
$64,000.
$64,000 for both structures.
That's correct.
And then once it was, you eliminated one of the structures, what was the adjusted cost?
$32,000.
And then when it was all said and done, what is the total now?
We've only paid him $14,500 in total, and we owe him the balance, but we've not paid that balance yet to him.
The balance between the $32,000 and the $14,500?
That's correct, sir.
What did he ask for? Because you said he came to the door.
Asked for the rest of the balance.
What is that? What did he ask for?
May I pull my I'm kind of like nervous and flustered right now. Whatever 32,000 minus 14,500 is would be the balance.
All right, no question, no more questions. Sorry.
Would you have been able to fit, you have two vehicles in there. If it was 4 feet less, would you have been able to fit both of those vehicles in there still side by side?
That's correct.
You would have?
So the truck camper,
Yeah.
the one that slides into the bed, that picks up, and our truck can back right pretty much underneath it.
Right, but I'm talking width-wise, not length.
Width, absolutely.
So width-wise, both of those vehicles still would have fit in there even if it was 4 feet
Yes.
more narrow?
Mr. Chair, as we're talking about storage of RVs, I just wanted to bring to your attention our section of the code is 62-2117, references parking, locating, and storing of recreational vehicles and equipment, commercial vehicles and heavy equipment, and motor vehicles and recreational vehicles for sale. So the way that the code is written, that it's for the property owner. Where's D?
This is not a for sale vehicle, right? This is personally owned?
Personally owned, yes.
Let me, just bear with me.
I am.
So, okay, so under B1, use, the recreational vehicle or recreational vehicle equipment shall be owned or used by the property owner, occupant, or guest. So that doesn't allow for someone that does not live there or is a occupant or guest of that property to be able to store a recreational vehicle. Just wanted to make sure that you guys understand what the code allows for and what it doesn't.
And both of these vehicles are yours, or one of them's your father-in-law's?
One of them's our father-in-law's. We didn't know that we couldn't have our parents' vehicle there. They spend time at our house since they live in Istapoga to see their grandkids, because all three of her siblings, 4 kids total, all have grandkids in Brevard County. So they come and stay at our house. That was the whole
camper.
with their camper. They pull it out and stay on the property when they're when they're
It's okay
visiting.
while they're there, but with what he just read me, be aware that there may be another issue coming your way regardless of what we do today.
Understood.
Okay. Correct?
As long as that they are occupied in the house as a guest, then it can be stored there. They can't live in the RV. They have to stay in the house itself.
And that's even just if it's for a weekend, like they come and, if you had family come from out of town with an RV and they parked in your driveway to stay there for the weekend, you're saying that they would not be allowed to stay in their RV. They'd have to park it and come inside to stay in the room.
Based on what our code says.
Understood. We have a whole lot of people on the street not doing that.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying what the code parameters are.
Yeah. Basically, And, yeah, I can't go outside cook because I can't say what I'm thinking, otherwise I get myself in all kinds of trouble. But what he is saying is they can't leave their vehicle at your place
Understood.
and then not live there.
Understood.
And so that would be the issue
Okay.
that you may end up having to deal with.
Now, since their vehicle is paid off, if they just take us down to the DMV and have us added as a registered owner on that registration, then
Then
we're
that would
totally
solve the
fine.
issue.
That's what we'll do
Okay.
to rectify that issue.
Okay. Other questions from the board at this point? All right. Guys, if you want to have a seat, because I got people waving at me back here, so you might as well have a seat. One at a time. If you'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the
My name
record.
is Frederick Barnhart. I live at 4275 Carrollwood Drive. I'm 3 houses down from Jeremy's house.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give us Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
Are you in favor or opposition?
Opposition.
Okay. How may we help you? You can put your hand down. It's okay.
It's kind of funny that an individual like Jeremy, who is a contractor, who runs a business out of his house, renting dumpsters out of this property, which is in a rural residential neighborhood, and inside his building at this time is a rollback dumpster truck. It was there 2 days ago. Excuse me.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. You will have time for rebuttal. You can rebut anything that he says, make notes, whatever, but you cannot speak out while he's speaking.
I agree his parents' camper's there and his truck is in there, but there's also a rollback truck that maintains, he has between 8 and 11 rollback dumpsters on the property at this time, which he rents per the side of his truck. It says dumpster rentals. He runs a business. He is a contractor. So how could a contractor not understand that somebody's overdoing his building? Number two, he put the culvert in. I saw him bring the culvert home on the back of his truck and drop it down.
Let me stop you there.
Okay.
We're not dealing with the culvert.
Right.
We're only dealing with the building
Well,
and
I'm
the
just
additional
saying that
size
we're
of the
leading up to
building.
why this is going like this, because he has done so many things wrong. He first moved in the property 6 months ago, tore down all the trees off the property. We live in a $1 million neighborhood. Anybody knows Carrollwood Drive? The houses are $1 million plus. He came in and destroyed every tree off the property. He came in with a long boom crane, tore up the road, blocked the drainage for the property, went back and dug out of the pond. He did the site prep himself. So if anything's wrong with that, he did it. No contractor did it. I saw him doing it. I saw him bringing in all the rocks for this driveway that's supposedly temporary, because those rocks are not cheap. And I have pictures of his rollback truck that he's using these things with.
And I'm not discounting anything you're telling me. Please don't misunderstand me.
Right.
But
But
your
as for the
opposition to the building, and that's
Yes.
what I'm sticking with
Yes, I
here.
am.
Okay.
And the reason being is because he has violated every other rule. He didn't take permits for anything to do any of this stuff. So he blatantly knew that this was not going to do it. And he's blatantly building this building to run his business out of, which is, it's an RR1 rural residential. There
Okay.
are no business allowed to be ran out of this area.
All right. Questions from the board?
And I have 6 neighbors and the entire trailer park to
Good
back my
afternoon.
statements.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Sir, hang tight.
I have a question for you. You are in opposition
Yes.
to this variance request,
Yes, I am.
which is a request.
228 feet.
Correct. Should the structure have been 1,280 square feet, the 26 by 40, would you still have the same issues you
No.
have?
Yes, well, if he's running a business, I'd still complain about those. And I have a copy of that document he's talking about,
So-
24 by 60.
So your concerns are more about him running the business and not necessarily the size of the structure?
No, because he's using the structure for his business.
I get that. That's not
Yes.
my question. Is your opposition
To the size of the
about
building,
the
yes.
exact size, the size of the structure
Yes.
being 220 square feet
Yes.
too large? Or is it other issues that you have?
It's all incorporated.
If he had a 26 by 40 and everything else was the same, no changes, everything else was the
couldn't-
same?
yeah, I couldn't
would
change that.
Would you still have issues?
Other issues, but not about the building. The building is way oversized. He's a contractor. He knows that he did it. He blatantly did it.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir. Anyone else want to speak in favor or opposition to this
One
variance
thing about
request?
the building, the placement of the building?
I'm sorry, we've moved.
Okay.
Thank you. You get one shot. When we're done, it's done. Please state your name and address for the record when you come to the microphone.
Carol Farmer, 51 Phyllis Drive, Melbourne, Florida.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
And you're in favor or opposition?
Opposition.
Okay. How may we help you?
I'm the community manager of the manufactured home community right on the other side of the tree line from their property. And with this building going in, we had to endure him pumping out himself a man-made lake in the backyard and flooding our property with it. And so then with the construction of this large building, it caused us to have a rat infestation, which we're still enduring over there. These are 55 plus residents in my community. They're retirees and they're freaking out about having rats in their homes. Also, my concern is with the rainy season upon us, hurricanes coming, the elevation of that building is going to cause the homes that are just, you know, I don't know, 30 feet away from where he is. I'm not sure as far as the distance, but right across the tree line in the ditch, their homes from flooding because of the elevation of that building and the size of it over there. They are right on the other side from us directly. In fact, there's a resident who lives right across from them that's here present today. But anyway, these are my concerns, and this is why I'd like to voice my opposition.
All right, well, hang tight. Mr. Newman, you have anything, sir?
Nope.
Would your concerns be any different if the building was 18% smaller, and that's the only difference?
Possibly.
Thank you.
It depends on the elevation as well.
The elevation would end up being the same.
I
It would
don't-
just
I
be
don't-
228 square feet smaller.
I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
that much about construction to answer that question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate you coming.
But
It's-
I'd like to say something that you're going to say isn't relevant. But I
If
feel
it's not
that-
relevant, I really don't
Okay, so
need
I
to have
can't
it.
mention the dumpsters.
No,
Okay.
it's not relevant.
Okay. That's
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Please understand, ladies and gentlemen, we deal with the subject matter only. There can be a laundry list of things you don't like about somebody, and it doesn't, we don't take that into effect. That's a whole nother department that deals with the fact that he's trying to do a business, if in fact he is. That's for somebody else to deal with. We are just dealing with the structure itself. Anything else, you can tell me, but it doesn't weigh because it's not what we're dealing with. So I'm not trying to be rude or crude or whatever, or ignore you. It's just not something that I'm dealing with. Somebody else want to speak in favor or opposition? Please state your name and address for the record.
Frank Diamond Jr., 100 Evelyn Drive.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
Are you in favor or opposition?
Opposition.
And how may we help you?
I live in the Village Glen Mobile Home Park.
Yes,
Lived
sir.
there for 20 years. And I walk quite a bit in the neighborhood, and especially up and down Carrollwood. And over the last year, since the new owners have bought the property, they have taken, which was a wildlife refuge, and I didn't bring pictures that I can hand you. I got them on my phone, but I'm not going to give you my phone. And they drained a pond that had wildlife in it. They cut all
Again,
the
I'm dealing with just the building.
They cut all the hardwood trees, and like the other gentleman said, this gentleman himself has been running equipment back there. He made the site preparations and things like
That's
that.
another department.
And I feel sorry for him. I really do, that his contractor didn't do what he should have been done, okay? I don't know why the contractor would put in that much, like you said, why he would build a metal building that was much bigger than what the plans called for and what was ordered.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
And it'll help here kind of expedite things. What's your problem with the building that he built?
As it stands right now, it is a larger building than it should be on the property.
Okay.
And the fact that, as the other gentleman said, he has moved 10 dumpsters into that property, which, again, I feel for this gentleman, but he is obviously a businessman and a contractor,
Okay.
and I can't really sit here and believe that.
Do you have a problem with the structure?
Yes,
What is that problem with the structure?
it's too large
That
for
it's
the property.
bigger? Okay. Ask your question.
I'll just ask the same question. If the structure was 18% smaller, would you have a problem with the structure? You'd be satisfied. Everything else stays the same.
I still wouldn't be satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Newman, you have anything?
Nope.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Anybody else want to speak in favor or opposition? Let me remind you that I'm only going to deal with matters that pertain to the building. I don't care about dumpsters, draining the lake. None of that pertains to the building. I'm dealing only with the building. Anything else, guys, I'll stop you. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Come up.
Neighborhood is a.
Hang on. I need your name and address for the
Carol
record.
Savarese Crawford.
Speak to the microphone, please.
Carol Savarese Crawford and Ronald Crawford. He broke his finger, so he couldn't be
Okay.
here today. He had to go to the doctor tomorrow.
Your address, please.
4250 Carrollwood Drive. We live in a very nice
Okay.
brick house.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
We met him when he bought the house, and he
Yes,
said
ma'am.
he was a general contractor, but I did not check with the DPR to see if he was licensed or not. And just for off the sake, they put the culvert in. We called code enforcement, and they said they were giving him a temporary permit because he was building a two-room addition in the house. And then, like the guy said, and everybody said, all these dumpsters came in, he's running an illegal business, and I object to the size. It's excessive. It's $1 million plus neighborhood with two-acre deed restrictions in it. It's a very nice neighborhood off of Turtle Mound.
Sure.
Total objection.
Okay.
So,
We'll take the property values down the tube. I have a real estate license for 33 years.
okay. I was only going to ask Mr. McCann's question, which was, if it was smaller and at the appropriate size, would you still object to the
Size
property?
it should be, not over.
No, but you'd be okay with it at the
I'll
size
be
of?
okay with that, but who do we call for the rest of the stuff with illegal business he's running? I called code enforcement
Well, that's a whole different situation than what I could do here. I'm not here to advise you
because
on
they
that.
had a lot of complaints, code enforcement. They said there was quite a few before me.
That's
I understand, but we're just
Okay.
trying to get it on the property and on
Okay.
that particular building. So you answered what I think we needed. Is there any other?
The place
so
looks
if you
like
have
the
no
worst house,
objection-
it looks like the worst house in the neighborhood now.
Sure, but even though, but
It
if
has to be within the
correct.
limits,
Well,
not
right.
over.
Well, no, right, got it. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak in favor or opposition? Come on back. Your final comments, please.
So I won't speak to all the other options, although we did meet with code enforcement this morning on all the things they're speaking with. We have come to a conclusion and we have a plan with code enforcement for all the things they're speaking with.
Okay.
They mentioned us pumping the pond out, which we had approval to do. They mentioned us bringing a crane back there and pumping and digging the pond out. That was part of the site prep, and that was the concrete contractor who did it. His name is Brad. I can again give you guys, he's the one who made the concrete too big. We were visited by code enforcement the day that was happening, and it was shown that it was approved for us to dig our pond to get the dirt to bring the building to the elevation that it needed to be. So all the things they're speaking on were all things we had prior approval from. Even though those do not go against specifically the variance one way or another, we did have approval with the county every step of the way for all of those options.
Did you get anything from the concrete contractor saying, oops, I built it too big?
I've got a text message from him. Like when I contacted him, asking him, because he's been calling me, asking me to pay him his money, and I said, I'm paying, I'm in business with the contractor who I dealt with, not with the subcontractor, and he's called me multiple times saying his boss will not pay him for the job he did. I need to pay him, and I told him I'm not under any obligation
That's not what
to.
I asked. Do you have anything stating where he admitted he built the
No.
concrete slab bigger than he was supposed to?
I do not, no.
Okay. I don't know how to say this right. It's going to come across really bad, so I'm just warning you before I say it. If you're going to come before a board and go, hey, I didn't authorize them to build this building this size, and they did it on their own without my permission, didn't even charge me extra for it, I would think you'd want to come with something that says, yeah, we built it bigger than it was supposed to have been built, or I messed up, or something from somebody that says something. Right now, everything that I'm looking at, they built it too big. They out of their own pocket, are spending this extra money to build a building bigger than it was supposed to have been, and they're not even charging you extra for it. You have no contract of any kind saying what size building it was supposed to build. In my mind, it doesn't look good.
Understood.
You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yep.
Okay. And so...
So we had even tried to explore the avenue of shortening the building, the necessary feet to be within the parameters. But when we spoke with the building department, they said that that couldn't take place unless we tore all of the concrete out, because the building has to be fastened on the footers. So if you were to shorten the building in any way, it wouldn't be sitting on the footers anymore, which means it wouldn't be secured for uplift, is what we were told.
If they shortened it and fastened that back to the concrete, could they not do that?
I can't address what the building department requests.
Yeah, they'd have to have the engineering to be able to support, the building.
Okay.
But we've already explored that avenue with the building department, trying to just shorten the building, and they said no, it has to be, all the concrete would have to be removed, the footing would have to be poured at the proper size for the bolts that go down, that hold the walls down from uplift, because then it would only be secured in 4 inches of concrete, which would take a big risk in uplift.
Yeah. Again, I built them, so I understand what they're talking about.
Oh, no, listen, I've got nothing more for their stuff. I'm saving all my stuff for discussion.
Mr. McCann, anything further?
No.
Sir? Ma'am? Guys, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right.
We have to have some sort of motion and a second in order to have discussion. So what's your pleasure?
Sure. So also for the sake of discussion, but also, I mean, I know we had a lot of testimony and everything going on here regarding this particular structure, but at the end of the day, I had a lot of concerns just on the basic facts of it. So let's start the discussion at that will reject the variance and then go from there through discussion.
We have a motion made by Mr. Newman to reject the variance requests. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Thomas. And discussion.
Yeah, like,
Mr. Newman.
like even before the dumpsters, the ponds, the cranes, and all of that stuff, and we appreciate you guys participating in the process, not discounting you. When it comes strictly to the structure and how it was built and how everything was going on, and again, like the costs that were going out of the way, like it just, there's a lot of big question marks about what's going on here. So I just have a hard time coming up with, other than feeling for that, like if you guys were absolutely, just ran through the ringer on this process and you guys got a really bad contractor and there was just all of these issues, like outside of those feelings of hardship for you on that, the whole process itself, I have a very hard time agreeing to this variance due to the circumstances.
Other discussions?
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
So what I'm basing my second on was that I just don't think I think there's insufficient evidence that the applicant provided that shows that they were not at least complicit to the conditions and circumstances, that they were not the cause of the conditions and circumstances. And I'm not saying that they're not telling the truth, they just didn't provide the evidence to the contrary. And so it's hard there's no way to really gauge, there's no proof. And then the second part is based on the testimony of some of the public speakers. It sounds like the overage, the larger building, is against the public interest, based on what they had said. Although I do think that's a fine line. My biggest concern is just having the insufficient evidence that they weren't the cause of the action.
I want to speak about some of the opposition that has had been presented to us, and I appreciate the members of the community coming in and giving us your concerns, and your concerns are valid. I'm not saying they're not, but please understand that this request for a variance is strictly on the size of the building, whether it's going to be 1,280 square feet, which is permitted, or 228 square feet larger, which is 1,508 square feet. So that's the only thing we're considering. And I just want you to know, even though you have other concerns, those concerns would be addressed with other entities and not this board. The majority of the speakers that came in, it was clear that your opposition to the size of the structure isn't really in opposition to the size of the structure. It's in opposition to many other things that had happened in your neighborhood. Other than the real estate lady, you did sway me with your presentation because you commented that the size of the structure does matter to you because it is the appearance of the structure and the size of the structure decreases values of the homes in the community, and you're a real estate agent, and I can appreciate that.
Ma'am?
My thoughts,
Pull the microphone closer to you, I'm sorry.
my thoughts after listening to everything, can you hear me?
Mhm.
After hearing everything today is that, definitely, to show the proof, yeah, you would have to definitely show your phone records to show that you spoke with that contractor. And again, I don't think there's a contractor out here that would do anything extra to provide extra things for people free of charge nowadays, right? Because they charge you for everything. That's one. The other thing is that you moved into this community, and it sounds like the outcry from the community is that, you know, you came in and made these changes that's not to that community, right? Let's say it's taken away from the community. But my concern is definitely with you. I agree. I think if we have a structure on that property, and now instead of having the two, and now you have the one, even though it's going to cost a lot to rip it up and do it again, I'm for one to say that it should be ripped up and done over correctly, the right way.
Here goes mine. You ready? I do not believe that a contractor is going to order a building larger than what you intended to order, pour the extra concrete, and build a building larger than you contracted him to build, and just suck it up and say, I did that. If he had brought in a 26 by 40 and put it on the concrete slab, and we're talking about the concrete slab being too big, I'd buy that all day long. The concrete guy messed up. But to think that the contractor is going to order a building 228 square feet bigger than what you wanted him to have and just eat that, I don't buy that. I just don't believe that is reasonable for me to buy into. I also believe that it wouldn't matter what size building you built. No offense, none of you guys would want it there, okay? I really don't. I think you're going to be objectionable to the building even if he builds it in the correct size. Something I do want to remind you of, though, you're talking about all the construction that he went through. If he has to tear this thing down and rebuild it again, there's going to be a lot more construction going on, okay? So that he has a right to build a 26 by 40 building, as I understand. And he can do that. He can take this one down, put a correct size up, and he doesn't have to be here. He doesn't have to come before us. He doesn't have to deal with us. But in this situation, he didn't. And therefore, we have to reason out, is this a reasonable presentation to us that it's something that he did not know of, did not cause, was not a part of, and should be subject to penalties of. He's saying the contractor is taken off, will not respond to him, even though he owes him, how much? 14, 15, $16,000, and the contractor's not responding to him. I promise you, if you owed me $16,000, I'm talking to you, okay? Either me, my attorney, somebody's going to be talking to you. Just so much of it you did not prove to me, okay, that it made sense in what that it made sense in what you were saying. That's why I was saying, if I'm coming here, I'm bringing documentation. I'm bringing something. Handshakes, maybe that's the way you used to do it. I'm sorry, I'm not building a building without something in front of me saying this is what I'm building and this is how much, so that if something goes wrong, I can then go to a court and make him fix that. I don't know that you could even make him fix it because you've got nothing to prove he did it wrong. Other than, you know, the county said this is the size building you can build, okay? You've got nothing to prove that he didn't do exactly what you asked him to do. And I think it's going to be a problem for you, okay? I feel for you. I do. I wish you had said a minute ago, I can take the back of the building off and reattach it and we would be good to go. I wish that was a solution. I wish that could be done. And maybe you can work something out where that's something that you can do. I don't know. That's not my department. But I cannot say that I'm in favor of this, even though 228 square feet is not that much property or not that much bigger. I can't say I'm in favor of this because I have a hard time buying the story. And please understand, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm not saying you're being untruthful with me. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to me. Does that, you follow me? Okay. All right, let me do the 6 points and then we're going to vote. Where did they go? Oh, here we go. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, buildings, structures in the same applicable zoning classification. There are no special circumstances or conditions that exist that would reasonably be considered a special circumstance or condition. That the special circumstances, conditions do not result of the actions of the applicant. Though you're not the contractor, you're the owner, which means you do have the responsibility. If that means you have to go out there and measure, and I build a lot of buildings, I follow up with my contractors. I make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. It is a result of the actions of the applicant. You're the one that contracted it, and therefore you're the one that's caused it to be built. The granting of the variance requested would not confer on the applicant any special privilege as denied by the provisions of this chapter in any other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification, though it would not be giving you any special privilege if we granted this. I don't see how that it wouldn't be considered as looking at you and going, we're going to give you an exemption that we would not give to somebody else. The literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of the chapter and will constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. I don't think it is depriving him of what is commonly enjoyed by other people. They can build a 26 by 40, but that's not what was built. That the variance granted as the minimum variance will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. It would be the minimum variance that would be required if we were going to allow this structure to exist. That the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. As we've heard from previous testimony, I do believe that it would be injurious to the area. I do believe that it is detrimental to the neighbors. As I stated previously, I don't think it's really going to matter what size building you build. They're not going to like it. But in this case, it would be detrimental because it is bigger than what is permitted by code. We have a motion and we have a second. The motion is to deny the variance. All in favor of denying the variance, say aye. Aye. Any opposed to denying the variance? I'm sorry, your variance is denied. That is not to me. You can see staff after the meeting. Point for H7. H7 was requested by the applicant to be withdrawn. Therefore, we will not be entertaining that case as it has been withdrawn from the docket. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next case that is before us?
Yes. Item number 7. Variance item
H8.
8. Okay, H8.
My apologies, sir.
Variance number 23V00010, Anthony V. and Kathleen E. Dilela. Request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-2118D3, to permit a variance of 6.38 feet over the 15.62 feet projection, 20% of the platted canal width permitted for a boat dock and a vessel moored at the dock. Variance number 2, Section 62-2118D2, to permit a variance of 3 feet from the required 7.5 foot side west setback for a boat dock in an RU-1-13 single-family residential zoning classification located at tax count number 2519528 in District 2.
All right, and before we hear it, does anybody need a break, or are we good to keep going? We're good? All right. Staff, we good? All right. Just want to make sure this meeting's inordinately long, so I want to make sure nobody's over here, their eyes start watering. Okay. Please step to the podium. Those of you that are speaking that are applicants, I need you at the podium.
Did we skip the one that we're supposed to pull back?
No, you had requested the withdrawal, so all I have to do is announce the withdrawal, which is what I did just a moment ago. I actually checked with the attorney to make sure that I was doing it correctly, and she said all I need to do is announce that that one was withdrawn by request of the applicant, and that's what I did.
Perfect.
Okay?
Yep.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Anthony Dilela. I'm at 1742 Bayshore Drive, Cocoa Beach, Florida, 32931.
Are you speaking, sir?
Possibly, yep.
Okay.
Carter Hayes, 1210 South Atlantic Ave in Cocoa Beach.
What was your name again?
Carter.
Okay.
I'm on the,
Ma'am? You're just a paper girl. Okay, but both of you, I need you at the podium, please, not wandering around.
Yep.
Right hands. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Who's speaking?
I am.
How may we help you?
Well, if you could
remember anything that you give me stays with me.
Yep.
If you have one for each of us, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yep, she's handing out a packet just so I could refer to those pictures. I'll make it quick. This is our second time after
Yes,
our
sir.
last
I
one was
remember
tabled.
the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since then, we've explored and just have tried to vet every possible scenario. So what we've come up with, it may not be perfect, but it is what we consider the best solution that everybody could still use the waterways. If you look at picture 1, you'll see what we started with, and then the second picture is where we've ended up and what we've applied for. And so our structure size hasn't gotten any bigger from our last meeting. We still only want a little less than 2.5 feet over what we're allowed for the structure. We only want 18 feet. When we were here, we'd learned that the code is that the boats cannot stick past the structure. So the surprise of that is because if you drive in any canal in Brevard County, they all stick past the structure. So we're glad that we tabled it because I just did not understand that, and I had made a lot of comments during that we want an 18-foot boat. Well, it'd be hard to find a pontoon boat to fit in an 18-foot structure without the motor. So our intent is to purchase a 18-foot pontoon. The motor would stick out, so we've added 4 feet onto our variance. And in our survey, we've asked that they put the proposed dock and a proposed boat area. So the dock would not change any structure. We've also moved the dock 3 feet to the west, and that's what that second variance is for. I think what that does is it does not encroach on the neighbor to the west because they have 160, 70 feet wraparound, and they're in the Grand Canal. So that little section over there in their corner of their property doesn't affect them, but it also puts our structure 3 feet away from our neighbor who does have a boat that's pulled parallel to their dock or seawall. If you look at picture 3, you'll see a rendering of what it would look like with just the boat and the piers. So if you see that pier on the right as you look at it, that's really over land. That's not a pier over water until maybe a couple feet at the end. That will, I think it's maybe 4 or 5 feet at the end. It'll have a little pier at the end. Any other orientation that we've tried is virtually impossible. So our 3 ways are to come straight in, go left, or go right. And so to the right is the shoreline, and our neighbor to the west, to the right and west, they don't have a seawall. And so that's a natural water's edge, which very shallow there. And also there's a street runoff drain that comes right out there, maybe 10 feet, 15 feet into their property line from ours. So if you look at going to the east towards the neighbors with the boat, the O'Kanes, we would have an issue, which we can do that within setbacks, fill all those setbacks. I could actually have a bigger boat then, but I think the boat next to me would prohibit me from getting in and out, and I think I'd prohibit them from getting in and out. So we've come to what we think is the solution, and you could see I did a rendering in number 4 of us pulling in and out that way. I also feel that, and I must say this, that feels short-term, because should the O'Kanes decide, or any other owner of that property decide at one point to change the orientation, that I'd have a huge argument with that, because I definitely would be blocked in at that point. So these are the reasons. We feel like we've exhausted all of them, and we just asked to grant the request. We do ask you to treat them separately, so that if you wanted us just to move over, or you didn't want us to move over and not go out, we'd be able to address both of them.
You have 2 different requests, and you want us to handle each of those separately, is that correct? Okay. Sir?
I don't know if I have too much to add at the opening, maybe if there's any questions on the contractor.
Okay.
Just that he's trying to keep it, like I said, it's just a couple of feet variance. We're trying to push it all the way over to stay out of the way. And by approving the drawing, it just nails down that the fixed structure is at 18. The more is just for a boat that, in and out or whatever. I know the 20% rule, which is, this is a, stepping outside of that, which it brings to the whole thing. Typically on a canal, the people across the canal, I get 20, you get 20, and that leaves 60 for everyone else to travel. But here, it's him coming in to park. It's not, in a major...
It's a cul-de-sac.
It's not a major thorough way. It's him parking, it's them parking, it's the 3 of them parking. So to me, him being over to the side, pull straight in, he's out of everyone's way. But if there's any other questions, yeah.
Okay. All right, you're in District 2, Mr. McCann.
Stay here.
She's not saying anything.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
When we broke last time and tabled your initial variance request, there was a hope that you and the neighbors would come to some sort of resolution between you.
Right.
I'm assuming that has not happened.
No, we invited them over and we talked to about a little. I think that we'll let them say their piece, and I think we're just going to have to let the chips. We don't agree on it. I know we couldn't come to an agreement on it. Well, that's why we're here.
If you were to build a dock structure completely within existing code and not requiring any variance, would that negatively impact your next-door neighbor's use of their current configuration of their dock?
Well, that's a twofold question. Yes is the answer. But my neighbor's boat sits outside of the setbacks. So if their boat fit within the setbacks, I could do that and not have any problem. But with their boat that sits over the setbacks and over another property line, it's impossible for me to be able to stay within that 15.62 feet. I'd have to turn it a little anyway and not have it parallel to my seawall. So I'd have to turn it out that way. And that's in the picture. You could see it with that boat sitting there. If I had 7.5 feet over and can back out like that, I wouldn't have a problem with that scenario. And it would be cheaper.
So the short version of your answer, please.
Yes.
If you put in a dock that would conform to current code and not need a variance, that can be done. You have the sufficient setbacks to do it.
I wouldn't be able to access my boat with my neighbor's boat there, though. So yes, I could do it, but I would never be able to pull my boat in or out unless they were not there. And actually, yeah, I think their fork on their thing would also prevent me, just on the lift, from being able to come in that way.
And would it prevent your neighbor also from?
I think so.
Ingress and egress to his dock?
I think so.
How many changes have you made to your initial request or your initial plan?
I can't answer that. I've brought natural resources out to my property, which who does that? But I brought them out twice to see if we can make a slip, come in 3 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, and then go out. I think I vetted every possible.
How many different
surveys?
Yeah.
I have paid for 6 surveys.
You paid for 6 surveys. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the reasoning for this is to try to come up with a solution in which you can enjoy your property the way it's intended to be enjoyed, and your next door neyghbor can also enjoy his property and her property the way it's intended to be.
That's our sole intent of all this. We're not trying to gain a view. We're in a cul-de-sac, so the view is the view is the view. We don't have this glorious view back there, so it's purely just to allow everybody to enjoy it.
The shifting of the whole dock structure into the setback.
Mm-hmm.
The entire reasoning for that is to be further away from your next door neighbor's property line and his dock and giving him better access.
Yes.
Ideally, you'd want to go out and project out the same distance that the boat is, or the same size of the boat, which would be 18 feet plus the motor.
Right.
And you're backing that in a little bit just to make more room for navigation of other boats, including your next door neighbors.
Correct. In fact, when I when we went under contract, for 24-foot piers before knowing, because we saw the size of the cove and thought we did have that in our realm before seeing the first survey. So, or seeing the original survey that didn't really show the width of the cove. It only showed the plat of the canal.
Right. And per code and per your contacts with the county, your allowable projection out into the canal, it would be 15.62 feet.
Correct.
You'd like to go out 18 feet.
Correct.
For that furthest piling.
Correct.
To make the minimum size dock you can make.
Yes.
So you're asking for
3.8
feet of variance for the projection.
Correct.
And then that's for the last piling, last part of the structure.
Yep.
Anything additional that you're asking for would just be for the motor, would be
Purely
just
motor.
the overhang of the boat.
And I wouldn't let myself buy a boat until you guys gave me an okay to do so. I don't know what I could put back there. So boats that I've looked at and tried to spec out to come back with my survey or my request all get me into that 21.345 inches. And then I asked for a couple inches because I don't think I could go all the way up against there. But I also felt like, and I learned at the last one, we didn't ask to go right. And when we got in here, we couldn't. So we did ask for 22, and if you wanted to back it down, we knew that we could come here and you could say, we're only going to give you the 21 and a half because that's all you truly need. That is the true minimum. 6 inches would be great to be able to navigate. And you know, we're only talking about the motor that would stick past, really, because it is a 18-foot pontoon. I'm not looking for anything bigger than that.
And I have a question for you, sir. Can this structure be constructed without that finger pier adjacent to the next door neighbors? Can it just have pilings with a boat lift attached to them?
Well, yeah, I don't think he's going for a boat lift right now, just the slit, the dock.
A wet slit.
Yeah. So could he just pull in and not have access to that side of the boat, I suppose, yeah?
I wouldn't have access to that side of the boat would be the problem when most pontoons do come in on that side. Furthermore, I think if we were denied on that, we want the piers more than we want the other part, mostly because we want to launch small watercraft, right? And that is a big part of our plan there. So if that 3 feet is the difference maker here, I would push back in that, when you look, and this was, I think, our issue when we came to the O'Kanes and asked for help. They wanted to focus on our property, which is fine. I'm asking for the variance, but they didn't want to focus on the fact that their boat is 25 feet, right, with engine. I'm having a hard time how you can give consideration to a boat that shouldn't be there when we're going through all this. And that's how we can't come up with something. If that structure was and vessel was within code, I would just put my second pier out there, have one that had a little caddy corner to it, and we'd be able to launch our small watercraft out there and not have any problems. We didn't create this.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm just trying to come up with some scenarios that could satisfy both you and your next door neighbors. As much as I want to help you get the use of your property that you should be entitled to use, if it's reasonable, I don't want to prevent your neighbors to be able to
Neither do we.
use their property. Clearly, I agree with you, and I think that's why you've went through all these efforts and have redesigned and surveyed and all that, so I do appreciate that. You mentioned something about launching some smaller craft. I'm assuming a kayak or something like
stand-up
that.
paddles, things like that.
Sir, could a small kayak dock be affixed to the seawall that would accomplish the same thing as far as launching a kayak?
If you had is there room for a kayak launch with the boat? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I'm saying like maybe in the middle of the seawall, between just directly in the middle between the west and east property lines.
If we did so to the left of where the boat's going, if we did a step down little dock there, I think that still isn't that get in his way.
Well, that would, but my also issue then is the access on almost every pontoon I've looked at, and this is only learning this because I'm having to, is on that side. That's where the door is.
I have another question for the contractor. Along the east side of the pontoon boat, which is the finger pier I'm talking about eliminating, how many pilings will you need to create a structure?
Yeah, we would just go 18, so probably 3.
3.
Yep.
And what if there was a finger pier just from the seawall to that middle piling? And that way you can access that side of the boat from the bow of the boat and not have that finger pier.
Do a shorter, maybe do a.
And not have that finger pier extend all the way to the 18 feet, which will give 3 more feet of navigable water for the neighbor at the end. But in the middle, it wouldn't be necessary.
So on the left, make that finger pier a little bit shorter?
Just extend it out to the first piling, not the last piling.
Or bring it out to 15 feet or something instead of 18.
I'd really like to see what that would look like and design something both that would look good back there too, not just abruptly stop that and let it keep going. And I'm just curious on is the 3 feet for that 6 feet is what we're talking about, that 18 square feet going to make that huge of a difference?
Well, I've been out to the property several
Yeah.
times, as you know, and as the neighbors know, and you have a very complicated variance request. And the reason it was tabled last time is because I don't think you would have got it passed the last time as it was originally presented. So I appreciate you redesigning it and bringing it back. I'm trying to ask questions and trying to help come up with a solution. What ifing? Because extending that finger pier out 18 feet all the way to almost the rear of the bow, or the rear of the boat to the stern of the boat, you're eliminating 3 more feet of navigable water that the neighbor could use, because that's his biggest concern is his ability to get his boat in and out. If we give him 3 more feet, and with me doing some measurements and some eyeballing, I think he's got plenty of space to come in and out with that extra 3 feet of water. You eliminate that 3 feet of water, and I'm not as comfortable with him having his ability to come in and out. So I'm trying to come up with a solution, and I think the only solution is to give you half a finger pier, so you can access your boat from that side of the boat, which is one of the things you want to do. Put a kayak or another little launching platform down there, and you just lose, the full finger pier, as opposed to losing the entire finger pier, or as opposed to having your variance denied.
Right. And obviously, we're not here for that. So, if I just make one more comment, the piling is going to be a 12-inch piling, right? So we're subtracting 2 feet is what we would do, right? Would it be acceptable to come from that 3 foot and go, because I think it would look better and more, what is that, aesthetically, parallel or symmetrical is the word I'm looking for, thank you, where we would come from that 3 feet and then work back to that piling, which is 1 foot. We wouldn't add any other space, but that I think would allow that to then taper in and look better. If you said no, then we would just go out to 6 feet. But it is, that
so you're
piling
saying
will be there.
have your 3 foot finger pier up until the first piling.
And then taper
from
all the way.
the second piling to the last piling, have that taper in to 1 foot.
Correct.
I don't know if 1 foot gives you if it meets the safety codes.
I don't know without having a drawing to see how that would work, but I just want to make sure that this board understands that the variance before you is a 6.38 deviation from what the code allows for. With the finger pier coming out 18 feet and an additional 4.38 feet to allow for the boat itself to stick out. So the only time that you would see relief is when the boat is not tied off on the dock. If that makes sense.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, possibly cutting that finger pier shorter,
even if you
still
took-
having the boat there isn't going to give you
Even if you took
as
that
much room as
finger
you think.
pier out per se, he's still going to need that same 6.38 feet.
Correct.
Because his boat's there.
Correct.
And so if we approve that, we can't necessarily say, yeah, we're going to approve the 6.38 feet. Well, we might be able to word it, but you can't have your finger pier go all the way to the end.
My concern is that it's so complicated and so detailed. When we're trying to issue the permit for exactly what you approve for, then it becomes a gray area of what did you really mean?
Yeah.
So hopefully the one drawing shows the fixed structure, but then the space, so maybe like approved as shown in the drawing with just the fixed structure and then so it couldn't be, that space can't be suddenly built on.
Yeah, I just think removing the finger pier gives you 3 extra feet of space between your boat or your pilings and the next door neighbor,
Right.
which could be a necessary
that,
3 feet. Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Mr. Chair?
Sir?
In the one diagram, number 2, you have the drawing. And then on number 3, it's basically the same thing, but it looks like it's far more to the, I'm assuming it's to the east. Is that right? I mean, if north is on top? So you have this drawing, and then you have this depiction, I'm assuming, that is.
If you look closely, and I don't believe that it is very moved, all I did was draw those squares on top of the survey. And so I think when you get rid of all that stuff, but look at where the pad is, the pier starts right about at that pad, and that's where it sticks out. So that's how I used it and it's only a rendering of what it would look like without all the mess.
I guess my question was, because on number 3, you have the one pier that actually starts almost a lot closer to the property line.
That's what we're asking for.
Okay, so this number.
That's our second variance request.
Okay. That's why I was wondering between 2 and 3, I was mixed. They look basically the same, just
okay.
one's further right, or one's
Got it.
further east.
Right. One's to project out, and one's to move over to the west.
Understood. That was my only question.
Okay.
When we tabled this last time, we talked about, and I'm probably going to piggyback on something here, we talked about removing one of the finger piers and just having it on one side.
Correct. And
you decided you didn't want to do that.
If you don't approve the variance, like I said, that the watercraft part, the small watercraft part is more important to us. We would have to go the other route and just build what we have within our setbacks and deal with the consequences, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but I don't want to spend that kind of money, go through all this process, and then not have the ability to for me and my kids and my wife to not, and anyone else who comes over, not to launch those things. And so that's where we're coming from. And I want obviously, but if...
Right, but you can't launch it from one pier. You got to have both to be able to do that? I'm asking.
The boat's there.
The boat will be in the center, so
Right.
we're going to have to go on the outside of the left pier,
Okay.
is where we
I got
intend
you.
on.
I understand that now. If you-
Right. A kayak, a stand-up paddleboard, a little...
Can you drop that off of your shore, off the seawall?
What's that?
Couldn't you put that in from the seawall? A kayak, a paddleboard,
No,
et cetera?
to step it down? So we would then put more poles in the water to create that step down, and we would still not be able to access where I'm going to have a door for the pontoon.
Or if you did, as
Right.
I suggest, you'd have that first length of finger pier
Right.
as your
No, no.
step down.
Yeah, and that's an option for us. I didn't say no to that. But if we weren't going to have any of that pier, we would go the other route and see where it goes. Right.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for them right now? Have a seat, guys. Notice I didn't say stand to the side, right? All right, who's first? Objection or? Okay. I'm sorry. Who is here to speak in favor or opposite, or have an objection? It's been too long. Okay. Please raise your right hand. No, don't do that yet. Give me your name and address.
Gwen O'Kane, 1732 Bay Shore Drive, Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Raise your right hand. And do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, which side are you on? You east or west?
East.
Okay. You're the furthest side. And you're the one that has the boat there currently?
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
I know you're going to tell us, and I'm out of order. I'm going to tell you that before I do this, okay?
Okay.
And so, is your boat outside? Did you put your pier in with permits or your lift, whatever you have?
So 20 odd years ago, we visited the county to find out what we could put back there. We were told that the lot lines project to the center of the circle. We were
Correct.
told we were allowed 12 feet.
Correct.
And so the only option we had was to put in a lift that sits alongside the dock.
Correct.
So yes, there's a permit for it.
Okay. And you permitted it?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, my contractor did, yes.
Okay. And your boat is within the perimeters of code?
As far as I know, I'm not aware that it's not.
Okay.
It's been
Well,
said.
I'm just asking, and the only reason I'm asking is because that's one of the things that he said is that your boat is.
That's you know, I guess I'd have to find out.
Okay. All right.
We talked about projections, but yeah. So
So
I don't know.
Are you in favor or
Opposition.
opposed? Okay. and go ahead, make your statements.
so-
I'll leave you alone.
All
My
right,
apologies.
fair enough. And I'll just start by saying, repeating what I heard earlier, I'm not an attorney, but I am an engineer. And so when I look at those renderings, I understand them implicitly, and I can, draw them out and have a good understanding of them. But I want to start by saying, we as neighbours, you can see that we chat. We'd like to see the Delilahs have their slice of heaven and to be able to build something back there. And we do believe there is a solution. However, we also believe that this variance application is contrary to public interest, and we do not believe that the Delilahs will suffer any undue hardship due to if this application should be denied. So before I get into the reasons as to why I object, I'd like to offer a solution. This really stems from the previous variance application, the last meeting that we came to.
Sure.
Tony, within the agenda report, H6, page 72, had an option 2, which you should have in front of you. I submitted all of this. You should have a drawing there that shows. Do you all have this?
I have had it.
Okay.
I have looked at it, yes.
All right. So, I submitted a letter. I submitted some drawings. I was told by maybe. Oh, thank you. So if you look at page 72, option 2, which is attachment A of my submission, it shows an image with their proposed dock sitting alongside their seawall as opposed to projecting 22 feet out into the circle. And in Tony's own words, you can see there it says, we're asked, before the variance, our design was more parallel to the long leg of the seawall. We are asking for the variance because this design will block the neighbour's boat launching. This design is approvable. So, long story short, we've been waiting to come to this meeting. We did go over and meet with them, but the definition of a discussion is two-way. There was no discussion. There never has been a discussion. All we've been, through the last year and a half is being told what they're planning to do. The meeting that we had when they invited us over, this variance application had already been submitted, so there was no discussion. But I would propose that option, which is permittable, is the best option for us. When I look at how we launch, how I access our boat lift, putting it alongside is very definitively the best option for us in terms of how I egress and ingress into our dock. It's very shallow back there. The area that's being proposed to leave open, I've never ever gone in there because there was a palm tree there previously, and it's exceptionally shallow. So when I come off my lift, I have to back off. I have to push the back of the boat with the engine out into the middle of the circle because that's where it's deepest. And what I'm worried about when I look at that drawing, and in fact, Tony took a drone picture, which he didn't submit, but he did send to us, which is attachment E. You can see once I get my boat off the lift, and trust me, it's quite a process for me to do this because I have to climb up 4 little 20-inch steps. I have to climb onto the back of the boat. I have to go down a ladder. I have to put the bung in the back of the boat. I have to tie 2 ropes onto the front of it. I have to back it off and I have to swing it around. But ultimately, I get it into that position that's shown in attachment E, and that's how we board. And what I'm worried about is not even the finger pier. What I'm worried more about is the boat engine that's going to be sticking out 22 feet and me hitting it. Because for me to get my boat into that position so we can get on and get off, I don't see that I'm going to be able to do that without hitting it and either damaging my boat or damaging his boat. So putting it alongside, I'm very confident that I can swing out, that I could clear it, and be good to go. So that's my solution. I figured better for me to come here with a solution than just talk about the reasons why not.
Hang on a second. I want to ask him a question because he'll be able to help me out here. Is he talking about going this way with it instead of this way? Is that what he's saying?
So basically, just the dock would be parallel to the seawall.
Parallel to the shore?
Yeah,
Okay.
and not perpendicular.
Okay.
Which would ultimately result in him launching and the same way I do, where you come off and back the engine into the deep part of the river.
Forgive me for asking him, but not you, but I do.
Sure.
He would be able to tell me what I was asking, and he's looking at what I'm looking at.
Okay. So, you know, I guess I've learned way more about this subject than I really want to, but as far as request number one, when the Dalilas originally submitted a permit, they were told by the county 3 times there was a deficiency raised that you can only project out 12 feet, which is what I was told 20 years ago, that it was a 12-foot projection. And about middle of last year, we were told by Tony they can't build a boat dock, and so they're just not going to. They were going to put rocks in, and that was the end of it. And the next thing we heard was machines showing up and this variance request. So, you know, from a 12-foot deficiency that was spelled out 3 times in the original permit, going to 22 feet, we're now talking about 83% difference in terms of a projection. So it's significant. Despite me reaching out to the county, I've been trying to figure out where this 15.52 that was used for the last variance, where this 15.62 that's being used for this variance, I still don't have an understanding of where that comes from. I've even reached out to the surveyor that was used, Paula L Land Surveying, and asked them, how do I figure out what that allowance is for my property? Because my property doesn't, you know, it looks straight down the canal. I've got several hundred feet. I couldn't get a good answer, and the answer I did get is in attachment number, or letter C. So they're showing that they sent something back saying C attached as far as how we do the measurement of the canal, and it shows they've picked one corner on the other side of the Dalila's property, shooting across the canal. I'm not even sure if it even touches my property. But I was trying to find out, is that projection based on 90 degrees from the dock or from the water line? I still really don't have a clear answer, despite, you know, asking multiple times and being willing to pay to get that answer. You know, I was told I needed to fill out some form, and I said, send me the form, I'll be happy to fill it out, I'll be happy to pay whatever, you know, if I could just find out what that is. To add further confusion, the neighbour on the other side of us is now building a seawall and also looking to put in a dock, has been approved for the 12 feet, right? So same deficiency was highlighted by the county. They were told they could have 12 feet. They accepted 12 feet. They got permitted for 12 feet. They started building. But I think now, and God bless her, Melissa's here, I think because of what's going on here, she's now looking to go bigger as well. So, you know, it's going to create a whole bunch of other issues now on the other side of us as well. As far as request number 2, so I did manage to get an answer from the county in terms of where the lot lines run. At the beginning, you know, based on what is being applied for here today, the assumption is that the lot lines run from the corner of the property and carry on out in the direction that they follow on the land out into the water. But I reached out to Mr. Bodie. I ended up speaking with Mr. Ball. Mr. Ball put me on to Mr. Vitale in the survey department, and Mr. Vitale sent back the email that is on attachment D1 with the pictures that says from the surveying department, all, in our opinion, in the survey division, is that the riparian rights to the lots that front these circular waterways is established from the marker along those rear lot lines as shown in the plat to the center of the circular canal. So if you look at the drawing that he sent with it, it shows lot lines running into the center of the circle. So that's what I was told 20 years ago. I built according to code. I got a permit. It seems to me when that plat was written, it was written with maybe this in mind happening 70 years later. And I think there's a solution. The solution in my mind is to build per code. He can get what he wants. There's no hardship then. And I feel comfortable then I can get my boat on and off.
Questions, guys? Sir?
Sorry, I just want to be thorough.
Sure.
Just want to be thorough. You believe if he, your next door neighbor, Mr. Dalella, if he put a dock in parallel to the seawall to code, that you still would be able to back your boat off your lift and not be obstructed by that structure?
Yes, definitively if it's 12 foot, and I believe so, yes. If it's 15.62, I think I could still do it, but I'm still not clear on where that dimension's coming from. But the answer to your question is yes.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the contractor.
Okay, we'll deal with that in a minute. I can't yet, but in regards to this, if I can get you to step to the side for just a minute. Sir, I forgot your name. My apologies.
Actually, I withdraw. I'm not going to ask you a question. I changed my mind. Thank you.
Is that everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Any other questions, Jim? Ladies? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here speaking in favor or opposition of the variance request, please come forward. When you get to the microphone, please give me your name and address.
Melissa Byron, 1722 Bayshore Drive, Cocoa Beach, 32931.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
Favor or opposition?
No, I'm for. I'm for
Okay.
them getting their variance.
Go
And
ahead.
I can clear up where the measurements is and how it is, because we talked to Tony Vitale too. Because I was concerned, because yes, I've owned my property for 14 years, and I wanted to put a dock in with a boat lift because I have an 18.5-foot Carolina skiff. Okay, so
Okay.
he explained to us, and you will have a copy of I can do it from my survey. You have a copy of my survey. It's a canal, it's a finger canal coming in. This is 60 feet, okay? When you measure the cul-de-sac, you do the diameter of it, okay? The diameter is the radius, is 40. Well, 40 plus 40 is the diameter, so that gives you 80, okay? So 20% of 80 is 16 feet. So, yes, when we initially went in to get our permit, we were told 12 feet because even our contractor goes, well, it's 12 feet here. Well, that's not how the county platted it, and that's not how it's set up. It's set up to do it. And you're allowed to go to the high water line when you put in your seawall. So, which we did. We went to put in the seawall so that, then we had a second surveyor come out and survey. So you survey from your seawall to across the way. The Lilly's put in a seawall, which is very helpful for me because now we had a good straight measurement. So we straight measured across. And that's where the figure comes from. He gets 15.2 because of the radius of this, the plot 10, 9, and 8. His is a little bit smaller when he shoots across than where I shoot across because you take our pins. And so, and Wynn's is even smaller. So, but what you need, you're going to ask us, this is the betterment of the whole public and how it's going to affect. There's 3 of us. That's all there is in this cul-de-sac. It's me, it's Tony, and it's Gwen. And we need to work together. And I have worked with Gwen. I'm not going to go complain to him when he takes his boat and puts it in my property, which he does. He can't get his boat off without coming into my property. I know that. I let him. I watch him take his boat off. He has to go into Tony's property to get it off because when he built the lift, which is fine, he had a smaller boat. He's got a bigger boat, so he backs in. So what we're trying to do is Tony should get what he wants. I'm going to get what I have without a variance. I'm going to go 16 feet. I'm going to put in my lift. I'm coming in as an angle. I keep my 7.5 feet setbacks on the side, side setbacks. I'm good. Gwen doesn't have it, so that's why he can't give it. He doesn't have the setbacks. If you shoot a line straight down my property line on my fence, which I will remind you is 7 inches inside my property line, so you come out and go with the 2 points, Gwen's boat's on my property line. That's okay. We're good neighbors. I have no problem with that. I want Tony to get what he gets. The other thing is the official survey states, as I just showed you, you can figure it out from that, and that came from the county. The idea is great. It improves our property that we all have new seawalls. I had granite, and he had cement bags. It is a great improvement for our area to be able to show my property value. Now I will have a seawall, and I will also have a lift, and I will have a dock, because I can have all those things. And I think Tony should be able to have that too. And I think that he has been reasonable in trying to work with our neighbors. We really, really want to work together. There's only 3 of us. What are the possibilities that we're all 3 going to go out at the same time, and we're all 3 going to want to come in at the same time? Well, I'm patient. I'll wait. You can bring your boat down and go, and I'll wait. I'll wait at the top of the canal and bring my boat in when you're done putting yours in. So what Tony is asking is reasonable. He's just asking to be able to have a pontoon boat that's 20 foot and with his engine. The engine is what's taking it, and he gets 15 too. So he's not looking to increase from 12. 12 is the canal, not the cul-de-sac. And so I'm in favor of Tony getting what he wants. I'll get what I want, and Gwen will keep his boat, and he'll be fine too. We'll just be patient in coming in and out if that's what it comes down to. So that's it.
Well, his projection is 15.62 feet is what he's permitted.
He gets 15 because you do and I get 16.
So, question.
Yes.
If he built it, as he was suggesting, sideways instead of long ways, how would that affect you?
Probably wouldn't affect me too bad. It's just that he couldn't get out because Gwen's boat is such that he could not make the turn. He have to come out, come this way. Gwen doesn't take the back of his boat. He backs it up and then turns forward and heads out, which is fine. I mean, that's cool. That's what I'm going to do. Mine is not perpendicular because the way the cul-de-sac comes around, why it would be harder for him to do it perpendicular is you don't have the angle to bring the boat in to get it up the lift. That's why my 16 feet, I need to be able to bring my boat in at an angle, which I don't need a variance, and not have to go around the curve of the cul-de-sac. So, none of us are asking for yachts. I mean, I got an 18.5 foot Carolina skiff.
Sir.
I don't know what career you had, but you should be a negotiator.
I'm retired. I play golf. And I'm dying to get my boat. And, all this going back and forth. I mean, I put in 2 more surveys that I didn't have to do. And because I wanted to be a good neighbor. I even used the same survey company that he used because, I thought, okay, let's get them to work together. I was hoping to get a deal, but I didn't. But, it works. I think that we all can, work this together. I mean, Gwen's got fences on both sides because we both put fences in. So he's got a great deal.
Okay. Ms. Mallard, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Mr. Newman? Sir? All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else that would like to speak in favor or in opposition to this variance request, please come forward. Pull it down. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Annie O'Kane, and my address is 1732 Bayshore Drive, Cocoa Beach.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give us, board, is the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question because I seen you bring that paper up. Are you about to read the objection that you already gave us?
No. It's,
okay.
I wanted to reply to Melissa.
Okay.
My husband is the engineer. He understands all that stuff much better than me. But Melissa said that she applied for a 16 feet permit, but her boat is 18.5 without the engine. How would that fit?
You're asking the wrong person that question.
But what I'm trying to say is we are in the middle and we kind of sandwich, and anybody that can stand on the dock outside can see that there is not much room. Right. And I don't understand why everybody could not go parallel because we're such a small area. That's just I have to say.
Any questions from anybody on the board? Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anyone else want to speak in favor or opposition to the variance request? Come on back. Wait, she does? Okay. You got to let me know, guys. I don't. Please state your name or address.
Paula L, 1722 Bayshore Drive.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the evidence you're about to give us, Board of Adjustments, is the truth?
Yes.
How may we help you?
So one is I'll answer Annie's question. The problem, the reason why we get 16 feet and how we get 18 and a half feet is the angle at which the boat lift is going to sit will allow us, I think, and we'll have to draw the right angles. Our contractor has the picture, I don't have it. Gives us the 3.5 extra feet to pull the boat all the way into the wall and then lift it up. And that will take care of the additional variance that we have, which I think the boat sticks out. I think we have a foot for the engine. And so our 18.5 feet is really 19.5 feet. Our boat lift is 16 feet.
I'm dealing with his variance, not anything that you're doing. Okay.
So anyway, I want to say a couple things. One is, Tony and Kathleen are asking for what appears to be about a 7% increase in the amount that they have, right? When we add all those numbers together, we're going to use 20%. They're going to use 27%. That comes up to a total of, I think it's 49% or 47%, which leaves us 52.5% of the canal as usable, right? With Tony's request to move his dock over and closer to kind of the mouth of the canal, that actually leaves us a larger circle in the middle of our canal from which we can all turn our boats, right? Or from which we can all pull our boats in or pull our boats out. And specifically, we've gone through this a number of times trying to understand how we can accommodate the O'Kane's boat, how we can accommodate, how we can all accommodate it, right? To make sure that we're there. I'll tell you that we had a dock. Our dock did stick out 16 feet into the canal. We are going to continue to use that 16 feet in the canal that we're allowed, but because it's going to be at an angle for us, there shouldn't be an issue with the O'Kane's boat. They're actually going to have more space because we're going to have a piling out at 16 feet, and then everything's going to come in towards our seawall from there, right? So there's going to be a much bigger spot inside of the canal to allow those things to happen, right? All of the things we're doing are truly trying to help make sure that we give everybody the ability that they have, right? We don't want to see them have to get rid of their boat and get a smaller one, right? The fact that the setbacks aren't being met, that's a code enforcement issue and not something for you guys to deal with. But what we're trying to be good neighbors. We're trying to make sure that, we have there's three of us, right? There's lot 10, lot 9, and lot 8. And so we want to give, we recognize that lot 9 doesn't have as much space as the rest of us, but yet already has an existing structure that we all have to accommodate. And so that's really what this request is, right? You could tell Tony he can't have a pontoon boat. You can tell Tony he can't do anything. But what I'll tell you is we looked at when we had our engineering drawings done, we looked at centering these things on the wall. We knew we had 12 feet. We went through the entire thing. As we came back to it, we said, you can't get a boat in up against the wall, right? You've got to come in around the canal. You've got to, it's a circular canal. So you do need a little bit of space to take your lift, slip, whatever it is that you're going to have, so that when you pull in, you have an area from which to turn the boat out. And so that's really, the 3 feet or so that they want to move out is just going to give us all more space in the general basin. To allow us to all have, what we need from an access perspective. I would tell you, I heard your conversation about, can you make the finger 3 feet? Can you make the finger whatever? Anything that moves closer to the O'Kane's property is going to cause them a problem, right? We've watched them pull out. I have a video, if I had known you wanted to see it, I have a video of how they pull out and how they pull in. So you can see that it's actually, he claims he jettisons the boat that way. That's not exactly what happens, right? He pulls the boat out, the lift is down, he pulls it up against the side, they all come in, and then they go out, right? But so it encroaches on all the neighbors' properties in order to accommodate him. Nobody's complained yet. We want everybody to do their own thing. If he backs onto our property, that's fine. If he backs onto the DeLellas, they've already said that's fine, right? But refocusing their lift to the middle of their property will not allow the O'Kane's to be able to pull their boat back in, right? The boat's, it's whatever it is, 15 feet wide, and they're going to need that room in order to get their boat backed out without running into that structure. So
Okay.
that's my thing.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thanks.
Anyone else? I don't think there's anybody else here, but anyone else in favor or opposition? Somebody's out in the hallway. Okay. Guys, come on back. Final comments.
Okay, so I think I would just like for Mr. Bodie to talked to the riparian rights, because I truly don't understand it, but the way he explained it to me, because that was brought up in the first request hearing, that we never got to the public comments, but it was written in, and so I asked about it then, and he explained to me, but I don't do it nearly as elegantly as he, so would you mind talking about why we extend the property lines out as opposed to?
For Paul to explain it, it needs to come from the board.
I'm good. I understand. Anybody need that explanation? Okay.
Okay.
We're good. Thank you.
So, second, I would like you to look at photo 1 from the pamphlet I handed out, the 5 photos or 6 photos that I handed out.
Yep.
That photo shows how the boat is on its lift for the O'Kanes with the 7.5 feet setback. If you remember, we tabled mine because my boat would stick outside of the structure past setbacks and projection limits. And I just heard Annie come up and say that their boat will stick past. Yet they have a 25-foot boat that can only fit in a 12-foot space. So they also ask us to go out to the west, which I've said that's not possible. What he's quoting from and pulling from is an email or a text that I sent and that we looked at early on, and I included it in our last to say this was an early choice to go to the right, to the west, and proved to be not able because of that natural sea edge, and then the pipe that comes out from the city drain, the water pipe runoff drain. So that's not an option to go that way. We purchased our house with our property lines and our setbacks and everything else, not theirs, not Melissa's, not anyone else, and we would just like to use that. If I do go that direction, and so before coming here, yesterday I went to code enforcement to make sure I understood it, because if you denied me, I'd have to know what the options were, and the options are that he would have to remove his boat because the setbacks, he's outside of the setbacks, just like if you granted me the variance last time and my boat projected out, you were putting me into code enforcement, so we tabled. So that's where we're coming from. We've looked at it. I watched him this Sunday for the air show bring the boat out. When I wasn't there when Mr. McCann came out, but I saw that he put some things where the piers would be. We're nowhere near. The O'Kanes will still be able to do that, but should they choose that they want to turn it, they could come and do what we're doing here. Regardless, if there's a complaint against the O'Kanes, they're going to have to remove their boat because it's not within setbacks. So I would have to make that complaint if I have to go that direction, because I don't think they'd be able to get their boat out either, but I know I wouldn't be able to get a boat in and out, because like Melissa said, we were forced to make that cul-de-sac circular. So we had to have 3 legs on each of ours. So if you look at that overhead, we each have 3 legs. When the O'Kanes built their seawall, I don't know if they did it or whoever did it, because it only goes back to 2007, they didn't do that, and they projected out further. So if you look at that right over on the overhead, you'll see it doesn't look like a circle. So without that, this is what they both look like. So that's a shot without the O'Kanes boat there, and what it looks like for what both myself and Melissa are proposing. Melissa doesn't need to propose anything. She's already got her permit. But what we're proposing and asking for the variance. So I think that's it.
Any further questions or comments, gentlemen, ladies?
Mr. Chair, if I can just interrupt for a second.
Please.
So if the board decides to entertain variances, I would suggest that you make a clarification on the projection, one for the dock itself and one of the projection for the boat.
I'm confused. Okay, we have 2 different variance requests.
Yes, you do. One is for the projection out.
Right.
One is for the setback on the west side, or I'm sorry, east side. What I'm telling you is that if you're going to entertain a variance for the projection, because the projection, the way that it's written is 22 feet. That's to accommodate the boat and the motor sticking out. So if
Okay.
that's proved, that would mean that the boat and the dock could project out that far. If you have a
Okay, I
concern
got
with
you.
that,
So-
you may want to
so
limit that the dock to be
Number
at
one, we would say.
Yes.
We're approving number one for the boat to be that,
No, to clarify that the number one for the dock projection is X, for the boat projection, it's Y. And number two is for the projection of the side setback.
okay. But the entire 6.38 feet is for the boat.
That is to accommodate the length of the boat that sticks out with the motor.
And the difference between the boat and the dock that he's wanting to build?
4 feet.
It's 4 feet, yes.
Okay. So it would be, for the dock, it would be
18
2.38 feet?
Exactly.
So I didn't hear, say that again?
So the dock would be 2.38 feet?
Correct.
That would be approving, and the boat would be 6.38 feet?
Correct.
If we decided
If
to
you go that
entertain
route,
to
yes.
approve that, okay. Thank you, sir. Questions, thoughts, anything? Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
You may have a seat. Whew. Real quick, welcome to your first meeting. All right, what's your pleasure?
To get the discussion going, I will make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve variance request 1 with the condition that the dock structure itself extends further out at 2.38 feet from the allowable 15.62-foot projection, and then the boat structure and/or the motor would account for the additional 4 feet of the variance request, and that would be a total of 6.38 feet variance for the boat and the dock structure total. What's that?
The boat would project out 22 feet.
Isn't that what the, isn't that?
It is, I just want to clarify.
Yes, so the boat itself would project out 22 feet. However, the structure would project out only 18,
And for variance 2.
As depicted on the survey.
as depicted on the survey, whichever survey we're going to go with. No, I'm just kidding. The most current survey of this application. And I'd like to make a second motion, but I think it would be better to handle this one first.
Do I have to take them one at a time if we're doing that?
I think it'll be cleaner for the record.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve variance number 1 for the boat dock to proceed 2.38 feet further than is permitted by code, and the boat 6.38 feet. The boat will be a total of 22 feet as depicted on survey. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right, we have a motion made by Mr. McCann. We have a second made by Ms. Mallard. And I'm laughing because I'm having to look at names because my mind's gone at this point. Discussion.
I appreciate the position of both the applicant and the neighbors, one in favor and one in objection to the applicant. I think the applicant has done everything in his power to try to be accommodating to the neighbors and trying to minimize any kind of hazard or any kind of extension and going into the setbacks, reducing the size of a possible boat, reducing the size of the dock. I think he's doing everything in his power to try to be accommodating but still enjoy the use of his property the way it was intended to be enjoyed. I also, for the neighbors in opposition, I want you to be able to continue enjoying your property the way it's intended to be enjoyed as well. I think the I think this, the solution presented does allow for both neighbors to properly use their docks and their boat lifts. And I have one concern, and that is with the finger pier that we talked about, but I'll save that discussion for the next variance request.
Anything?
Yes, sir.
Sir? Ma'am? So we have a motion and a second to approve the first variance request. I'm going to go ahead and give my opinion, then I'll read the 6 points. As you know from previous, I don't have much of an opinion. But my concern is always the same when we get to waterways. When we start allowing additions to what code allows, then the guy down the street wants it, and the guy next door wants it, and then somebody else wants it, and before you know, you have a mess. I'm not in favor of it for that reason and that reason alone. I think the code is there for a purpose, and that is to make it usable for everybody into the future. And I think if we allow this, I think then the next neighbor comes up. How do you say no to the next neighbor when you said no to this one or said yes to this one? And I think it just continues to be a problem. And we have seen it in the past. Somebody asked for 3 feet, and then the next person asked for 4 feet, then the next one asked for 5 feet, and it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going. So I will not be in favor of it for those reasons. I'm just giving you my opinion, okay? Special circumstances and conditions exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. I don't know that there's special circumstances, conditions, other than the fact it's a cul-de-sac. I'll give you that. And the cul-de-sac certainly creates a condition would not be normal if you were further down and everything was just straight. So I'll put it that way. Is that fair to say, I think? And special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. In this case, it's the applicant's desire to put a structure in that is larger than what is permitted. So in that situation, yeah, he's creating this, but then he didn't create the cul-de-sac. So it all depends on which way you're looking at it. The granting of the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege as denied by the provisions of this chapter of the lands, buildings, or structures in identical zoning classification. I don't believe it would confer any special privilege on him, as we are not giving it to him because he's a friend or a good old buddy or whatever, okay? The literal enforcement of this provision of the chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by properties in the identical zoning classification of the provisions of this chapter, and will constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. I don't believe that it will create any undue hardship or any unnecessary hardship on him. It would just require him either to have a smaller boat or do it a different way and stay within code. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. It would be the minimum variance for the structure he's wanting to build, but it is not the minimum variance for a structure that is built within code. That granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, that such a variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. That one is going to be a matter of opinion. In my opinion, I think it would be. I believe Mr. Kane has expressed an opinion where he thinks it would not be. Again, that is an opinion thing. In my opinion, I think it would be injurious and potentially down the road cause some problems. All right. That being said, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of granting the variance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. I will say no. And variance number 1 is approved. Variance number 2.
For variance number 2, I expect some additional discussion, but I would make a motion to approve variance request 2. as depicted in the survey.
Second.
We have a motion made by Mr. McCann to approve. We have a second by Mr. Thomas. Discussion.
Well, I'd like to have a discussion among the board members about the actual finger pier itself. I think the 3-foot finger pier increases the projection towards the concerned neighbor's property and the use of his boat. And I think any additional space for him to navigate in and out of his dock, I think we should account for. I'm also supportive of just doing basically a half a finger pier, that finger pier coming out from the seawall, extending out to the middle piling, which would give the applicant access to his boat and on that starboard side, and also allow for a kayak launch. So that's what's on my mind.
Mr. Ball, question. Didn't you say doing that specific thing, limiting the size of that finger pier and so forth, would create problems for permitting?
Well, the code allows for the projection, so I don't know if you can necessarily prohibit what's already allowed in the code, unless you can provide some, health, safety, and welfare issue that you perceive.
I need to back the boat up here for a minute.
Literally?
Forgive me for that. We're actually dealing with only the side setback at this
Correct,
point.
on the west side.
So the thing, that finger pier thing should have been dealt with in the last motion?
Not necessarily.
Okay, we can still put it in
yeah,
here.
that.
Okay. I'm not trying to create a problem. I'm trying to make sure we're not doing something improper.
Yeah, that the east side finger is not part of any of the variance requests.
Okay. But we could say that we would approve this 3-foot, provided the finger pier on the east side was only X
I
number
would
of
defer
feet
that
long.
to the county attorney, but, that seems like a reasonable request. You're basing your recommendation on.
Is that a permissible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can apply any conditions that you want in your, as long as they're within code, in your motion.
Okay. Did you want to make that part of your motion?
I would want to hear if there's more discussion from the other board members and what their feel is on that.
In general, I feel like we made a very good accommodation, at least for the boat portion itself. If he's able to do this on the east side, and I'd be fine with the half. Let's just put it this way. That's when you were talking about the half measure, I was more fine with probably that one than the full, if that's the way to go. But that's kind of where my mind's at right now. I'm still trying to grapple it all together.
Sir?
I'd be inclined I'll support it either way, but I would be inclined to leave it as it is, just for the fact because you're kind of making an adjustment just to better accommodate his larger boat. Mm-hmm. If he had a 12-foot boat, it would be an issue. I think that I just would be inclined to keep it as it is and not adjust this based upon, because he would have a little easier time navigating his larger boat.
Right, but then we accommodated, no offense, we accommodated for him to have a larger boat.
True.
So now you're putting 2 larger boats in that area. So if we're accommodating for him to have a larger boat, I don't know that we want to look the other guy and go, well, if he didn't have a bigger boat, this wouldn't be a problem because we're accommodating one,
And I'm only based on what the comments were, but the
Okay.
larger boat is already
a problem.
Already infringing upon both the neighbors, and they're already accommodating him. So I didn't have a problem with allowing for the.
Okay.
I just like to say I like the fact that the neighbors are willing really to work together for each other, and especially for your space for all. And I think he went above and beyond all he could do for his neighbors as well. And I think that we should accommodate him to what he needs right now. And I vote yes.
Okay. Do you want to make the adjustment to your?
You know, I went to the property several times, and I've been boating my whole life. I have a dock. I've built a dock. I have a boat. I have a really good feel for what's happening and what you want and what you want. And I really think a foot or two of extra navigation room could be critical. And I'm going to amend my motion. I'm going to make a motion that the variance request number 2 be approved as depicted in the survey, with the condition that the left finger pier only extends out half the distance of the dock structure to the middle piling.
It's his motion.
As long as the
Yes,
second-
you can.
as long as the seconder agrees.
It's his motion, so he can adjust it as he desires. If he wanted, he could withdraw the motion and then start all over. So he can adjust it, and then, but we have to get a second to the adjustment.
As the
Correct.
seconder, I will agree to that.
Okay.
Just because the way you asked about the number of pilings, there was 3 of them. So we talked about going out 12 because it'll be 6, 12, 18, and leaving that last 6 feet off. So it would be 12, not half. We won't have a piling at 9. You know what I mean?
All right.
So it would be 12 feet.
Is that where you believe the pilings will be?
If we were going to go 18, yeah, split it like that.
So
Or
we
could
need it to go out 12
10,
feet.
You know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me amend the amended motion. Is it okay if I do that, ma'am?
You're rewording it is what you're doing.
I amend my motion to approve the variance request number 2 as depicted in the survey, with the condition that the finger pier only extend out 12 feet to the second piling extending out from the seawall.
Sir?
Agreed.
Which side? Is it the
The left
east?
side.
East side.
The east side, okay.
East side.
Agreed.
Okay. Who's typing this up for me to sign? All right. We have a motion to approve the second variance request. I'm not even going to try to do it, and an amendment. We will approve the request provided that the east finger pier does not protrude more than 12 feet or to the second pylon. Whichever is less, yeah. And we have a second, as depicted on the survey. There we go. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'm still going to be a no.
Okay.
All right? And it is approved. Seeing no more business before the board, we are adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.